Everybody could take a seat, get started on time. Anyway, this is our 16th year in business, and this is our 16th kickoff meeting. Anyway, I think we've got a really good lineup for you today, and I think to me, I think when you come and you want to take something away from the meeting, I think this is going to be a good one today. So thanks for coming, and turn it over to Matt.
All right, you guys hear me better? I'll maybe just hold this. So again, thanks for coming. We got online right now. Thanks for the online people. We're recording this. So if you do miss anything or want to rewatch, it'll be up on YouTube after the meeting. What I get to talk to you today is something exciting. I haven't been this excited to talk about something in crop insurance probably since 2012 when the trend yield adjustment came out. That was a huge thing for farmers. It upped our yields. It made our insurance much better. This year, there's a lot of changes in crop insurance, a lot of good changes that's going to make your policies cheaper and give you the ability to buy more insurance at a time where agriculture right now isn't the best right now. Prices are low, production costs are high. 2026 could be interesting, right? So let's talk about the changes that happened this year. Hang on one second. And my clicker doesn't want to work. Hang on one second. There we go. All right, a lot of the changes that were made in crop insurance were made in the one big beautiful bill that was signed back in July 4th of this coming year. There's a lot of stuff in this bill and a lot of stuff for crop insurance, how it's going to affect you. So a lot of the major changes, a lot of them have to do with price dropping with your crop insurance and making it better for you. So the first thing, the BFR, the beginning farmer rancher, raise your hand if you have farmed for less than 10 years in the room. This is going to be huge for you, okay? The premium subsidy increases. Crop insurance is going to be cheaper because they increase subsidies. The area-based plan subsidies, big. Stacking restrictions with area-based plans. I'm going to talk just slightly on ARC and PLC, base acres changes, and prevent plant. So the first thing, again, when you can talk about something that's going to cheapen up crop insurance and make it better, it's an awesome feeling, right? So in the past, if you were a beginning farmer and rancher, you had 5 years that you could get a 10% subsidy increase in your premium. Well, they changed that this year and made it 10 years. And they stacked how much subsidy you can get starting right away. So the first 2 years, instead of a 10% subsidy, you now get 15. Years 3, you can get 13. Year 4, you're at 11. And from 5 to 10, you're at 10%. Well, Matt, what if I already had gone through my 5 years? Now I'm on year 8. What do I get? Well, you get 8, 9, and 10. You don't get another 5 years, but you get to exhaust those next 3 years of that subsidy, which makes big changes, or it makes your premium much cheaper. So this is kind of just a side-by-side how the beginning farmer and rancher expands it to 10 years. The subsidies, the first 4 years, they're stair-step down. But again, the first 2 years when you start, it's a 15% premium subsidy. And 6 to 10, now it's 10%, where in the past, it was 0. Well, what does this mean? What does it really mean? Put it in numbers for me, Matt. Well, when you look at a 215 bushel trend yield adjusted yield, and on corn, and Pembroke County is 85%, for the average guy like myself, it's going to cost $22.26. Okay? If I'm that BFR, it's going to lower it to $14.80, a $7.46 savings. Okay? And as you keep adding your years, your savings goes down. But even that guy that from 5 to 10, you still save almost $5 an acre using that example. This is huge saving for the beginning farmer and rancher. Now, this next subsidy goes for everybody, not only the beginning farmer and rancher, but for everyone in this room. What they did is, depending on your unit structure, whether you're basic or optional, or if you're enterprise, they've added another increase in your subsidy. So if you're at the 55 to 75% range, you now have additional 5% premium subsidy. At levels 80 to 85, you have additional 3. And at enterprise, if that's what you've done in the past, at 75 to 85, you have now additional 3% savings. Okay, 2 things already that are going to save a lot of money. So when you look at what it was in the past, crop insurance is heavily subsidized. It's what makes it work, right? If it wasn't highly subsidized, you wouldn't have the people in it the way it is. So if you look at on top is the level of coverage that you might take, that 50 to 85%, the different years for basic and optional units. You can see in 2026 at 85%, it's 41% subsidized, where last year it was 38. So you can see crop insurance is heavily subsidized, and it just got another subsidized portion this year. Again, put it into numbers, Matt. What is it really going to save me? So if I look at pricing, now I use 25 pricing volatility. I'm going to talk about the volatility factor in a little bit, what that's going to save you. But you look at pricing from 25, I put the 25 numbers in and put the 25 volatility factor in. What does it save me? So on corn, if you go 85%, last year option units would have been 35 bucks, saved about $2, okay, because of that. If your enterprise, again, it's 23.98, but because of that subsidy, now it's 22.26. Soybeans, kind of the same thing. Because of those subsidies, it dropped comparative to last year. The same metrics we did last year, the spring price and the volatility factor. What is the volatility factor? Now, this wasn't changed in the one big beautiful bill, but it's something that's going to affect your insurance this year, the way this is tracking. So I'm going to read this off. The RMA volatility factor calculation methodology. RMA uses a measure of price volatility based on the Black-Scholes model. This model provides a formula that translates option prices, the market charges, to lock in the futures price, and an applied volatility of the price of the commodity. This price volatility is used in the calculation of RMA's premium rates for revenue coverage. Okay? The result that the premium rate that the RMA charges to lock in that futures price through crop insurance is equivalent to what the market charges to lock in a price through an options contract. Saying all that, what does it mean? Last year, your volatility factor is determined the last 5 days of the price election period. So right now we're getting the price for corn. Okay, in the month of February for December futures, we're tracking that. The last 5 days of the month, we'll lock in that volatility factor. Last year, corn was 0.18, and beans were 1.14. Now this morning, beans changed to 0.13 this year, but corn is 0.15. The cheaper the volatility, or the lower the volatility, the cheaper your insurance. So the lower is better. So again, when I use those metrics from last year and I type in the lower volatility, that is going to save you potentially $2 to $4 an acre on your corn. Okay, this is why I'm so excited. Getting farmer rancher, cheaper. Those subsidy increases, cheaper, and with the volatility hopefully lower, cheaper you get. So prevent plant changes. We hopefully we'll talk about prevent plant. I remember in the 2012 meeting we had a speaker on prevent plant. Like, why are we doing this? No one ever prevent plants around here. And then 13 happened, and then 14 happened. Our agency alone in 14, we had over 35,000 acres prevent planted. It was ugly. Now, with prevent plant, you have the ability to buy up coverage, either 5% or in the past, not recently, up to 10%. They took the 10% away from us, and now they're taking the 5% away. So you can't buy up your prevent plant. You still have prevent plant. You can't buy up prevent plant coverage. The other nice thing they did is with prevent plant, you got to prove a couple things. You had to prove that you insured, planted, and harvested that crop in the last 4 years to be eligible for prevent plant. Okay. One of the holdups of this was the insured part. Okay. Let's say you bought a farm from somebody, they passed away, and the next year it was wet, and you wanted to plant it. You had to prove that it was somehow insured. Well, how do you do that? Okay. They took some of the out of it to make it simpler. The next thing makes it cheaper. This is going to be huge this year. We sold a lot of ECO last year. I think most everybody will be buying it this year for what happened. So when you look at the subsidies, last year it was 65%. This was a change from the year before. It was 43% subsidized. We went to 65% this year, or last year. Perspective. Let's go back to that beginning farmer rancher. Okay, He's got the 80% subsidy on it, and he gets the 15 on top of it. If you're a beginning farmer, it's an automatic check because it's going to cost you almost nothing to buy ECO. And I'll talk about what they mean and how they work here in a bit. The next thing they did is most people in this room are hopefully big payments in our county for the 24 crop. In the past, you could not take SCO with our county. Changed that this year, and now you can take our county with SCO. Okay, another big change. In the future, they're looking at some changes with SCO that you'll be able to buy up your coverage to 90%, and then at that point, we'll see what they're going to do with this ECO. You know, how they're going to handle that for next year. So again, 8% subsidy from SCO. SCO goes from, it's a county-based product. It goes from wherever your multi-peril ends to 86%, right? So if you're at 75%, your SCO goes from 75 to 86. If you're at 80, it goes from 80 to 86%. And ECO goes from 86 to 90 or 95%, depending on what you choose. Okay, and then for 27, SCO will go to 90%. There was some talk earlier this fall about the MCO product, the margin coverage option product. We were not big pushers of this, and I'll explain why. One, the MCO product, what it does is it ensures your margin, right? So what it did is it allowed you to set a spring price back in September, okay? The problem with that, now we're higher now with the price running. So you'd have been stuck with a lower price. The other bad thing with the margin is if you bought MCO, couldn't buy ECO or any of the ECO products I'll talk about that combine themselves with an optional product off to the side. We didn't sell any, and it sounded like the state of Minnesota, there was not much sold. But if you did happen to buy MCO, can't buy ECO. So when we put that all in perspective, 2 years ago, we sold almost no ECO. It wasn't a lot. It was expensive, right? And it's a county-based product, so the county has to have a problem, right? In 2025, because of that subsidy increase to 65%, there was a big increase in ECO sales. 26, I think it looks to be a smart management tool. I'm going to say this very loudly, on top of a sound multi-peril policy. Repeat that, on top of a sound multi-peril policy. I've told this as people come in, MCO gives you a lot of coverage, right? You get up to 95%, but it's based on county. I'll talk about this in my next presentation, but you can see on the bottom, the 43 and 24 up to 80% now. So again, what does this mean? How much is it going to save me? Here's looking if I put in SCO and SCO and ECO in 24, it cost me almost 25 bucks an acre. On corn, it probably would have got you say $90, $95 coverage. Last year, it got to 15.25. That ratio got pretty good for what you're spending to what you could potentially get. For this coming year, 8.72. If you're beginning farmer rancher, 6 through 10, cut that number in half, and it's a quarter if you're the first 2 years farming. Okay, we sold a lot of corn last year. Beans, especially with the price run up this year, we're at 10.93 today, way higher than I think any of us thought it would be. Still, we have to get to the end of the month to see where it's going to track. But you can see how the price has dropped. In 26, $4.85. This looks to be a good risk management tool on top of a sound multi-peril policy. I know Paul's going to talk a little bit about ARC and PLC updates. I'm just going to make this quick. The nice thing with your 25 election, they're going to give you both, right? They're going to give you ARC or PLC. It does not matter. Well, why does that matter? I read somewhere that last year that 75 million acres took ARC County and 15 million acres took PLC on corn. If you take that number, and I'm just saying if every county was like Renville County, we got like $95 an acre for our county. The guy that took PLC, that 15 million acres gave up over $1 billion by taking PLC. It's an ugly number. So you can see this year they said everyone take, we're going to give you both. But you can see next year they're going to make a select. Why? They know farmers sometimes are going to make the wrong decision, and they're going to save billions of dollars by making us choose. Okay. So the next thing, but as you go down the list, you can now get SEO coverage. Formula is increased to 85%. 5-year average, you get 88. Your ARC guarantee is now calculated at 90% benchmark rather than 85. Again, giving us more dollars if we collect, right? And the Arc County payment has increased to 12% of the Arc County benchmark, up to the 10% cap. All good news, right? Now, I pulled this off Successful Farmer. This is actually good news for all of them. Okay? This is what they were predicting. ARC and PLC enrollment could be delayed significantly. Producers will know their 26 production and yields before they decide whether to select and subsequently enroll in ARC PLC for the 26 crop. Okay? The payment we're going to get for this fall will be for the 25. So we have to pick 26. Well, the nice thing, if we harvest our whole 26 crop, we're going to know kind of what our county goes. We're going to kind of go somewhat what the nation goes. And once we get into September, we're going to start seeing the tracking price of where the price of corn is going to be. So we're going to have a good indication of what we should get for the next year. But why is this going to take a little longer? Well, part of this are base acres. And again, more good news. You can see why I'm so excited to talk about this, because it's so much good news for the farmers, how it's going to help us. So base acres, we're going to have a chance to update our base acres. Okay, they're going to look at 2019 to 2023, and as you can read, there could be some versions. But here's kind of the breakdown. If they'll take those average plantings from 19 to 23, that's what we're going to look at. But here's the big thing, especially guys that don't have just corn and soybeans. On those plantings, you are allowed to include up to 15% that was planted to non-covered crops. Okay? As I talked to FSA, they haven't been trained on it yet. Okay? So in order to sign up for our PLC, we got to get our base acres done first. So this might take some time. I will tell you when this comes out. If any of you need help, please come into our office and help. Do I know everything about it right now? Absolutely not. FSA isn't trained. But when it comes, we will help you when it gets to that point to help you decide your base acres. If you want as many base acres as you can. The overall limit on the national level is 30 million new base acres. So if everyone puts these new base acres in, we might get over 30 million. They'll put a cap on it, give you a percentage of the total. SRD phase 2. Okay. Hopefully some of you all signed up got money for the phase 1. It was for the 23 and 24 crops. The first phase is revenue based. The second phase is yield based. There's 16.9 billion. Maybe the FSA has changed, but at first they were telling us that they weren't going to send information out, but you needed to go up there and sign up. Okay. So if you haven't gone in, at least check. Go in your FSA office, ask for the form. It's all pre-filled. They pull the data from our agency crop insurance, so everything should be filled in. Sign up for that goes to April 30th. And again, everything was pre-filled. The first round you got 30%, and I can't remember, it was like $6 billion, $7 billion, something like that paid out. Once they get phase 2 complete, there'll be a true up at some point. Okay, how much that can be, I'm not exactly sure, but we'll keep an eye on it. Any of you heard about the Farmer Bridge assistance? I guess more money coming our way. This money's supposed to be paid out somewhere by end of February. Okay, so you can see by planted crop, it's going to go on planted acres from last year. Last year, if you planted corn, you're going to get $44.36. Soybeans, you're at $30.88. So you can see all the other crops listed. This was kind of a cool chart. Not cool, because it's not good. That we got from Farm Bureau. And they talked about the losses that farmers incurred for this last year. And if you look at the different crops, say corn, we got the EPAP money up front. We're going to get this FBA money as we come ahead. But the average farmer still lost $87 an acre. Okay. The one thing that always surprises me is I always see the cotton guys. I don't know anyone plants cotton. I always seem to get in trouble. Their losses. One thing I pulled, I guess I don't know if it's going to come out, when it's going to come out, but there's a couple different aid packages out there that they're working on. This was the Democratic version. There was 17 billion of aid farm proposal. How it's going to spread out, I'm not sure. Being pushed out, I don't know. They got to get it all into. I think the Republican was 15 billion for agriculture. So again, a lot of changes in crop insurance, a lot of things that will potentially fundamentally change the way you think about how you're going to insure this year. Okay, it's going to be cheaper. Those county products, again, they're county products. They got really cheap. And if you take revenue protection, it works. Other than it looks at the county expected yield and the county actual or final yield. The way they set the price in the spring and the fall is the same. So if we have a big price decline, and I'll talk about this in my next presentation. It's a put option, right? It's a good way that you can buy a lot of coverage for not a lot of dollars, but again, based off county. Can't stress that enough. That's all I got. Honestly, people, if I would have like 8 more slides, I went through how many slides crop insurance kept getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. I have like 6 more slides and be literally free. They're going to be free, right? But thank you. Anyone have any questions? I'll be around after the meeting if anyone wants to come talk. So next up, and I spoke at our meeting multiple times here in Hutch. She's going to give a little market update for us, kind of where the markets are at. Yep.
Hello, welcome. Thank you for coming. And for those of you who don't know me, I am Jess Friel, currently with ADN, and I've been speaking here for the last couple of years. In the next couple of minutes, I'm going to throw a lot of information at you. Yeah, stay with that. The next couple of minutes, I'm going to throw a lot of information at you, a lot of charts, a lot of numbers, and then I'm going to do my best to break it down into what it means. Because when I first started, I sat on the other side of the table where you're sitting, and I looked at all these charts and people were talking, and that's really scary. A lot of really good information. So we're going to go for these things. I'm going to condense this into the time as we can here, so bear with me. All right, we're going to start off with corn. Okay. So for world corn production, we have a lot in the world again, and I am on a leash. So we have a lot of corn in the world again this year. U.S. producing about a third of the world's corn. Follows for those of you who don't know. China about a quarter of the world's corn, and Brazil only really interesting. A lot of really up on South America. We hear a lot about the safrinha corn crop and how much they're producing and like that. But the reality is they only produce about 10% of world corn, and China actually produces a lot more than we think that. So this chart is talking about South America, and we're going to talk about China. So we have the top producing fields here. United States obviously number 1. We are extremely good at producing corn. Followed shortly by Canada, Argentina come a long way, but then you see they go way down there. And China actually, with the advances in data and technology and agriculture, it produces a better result about Chinese corn production. A little bit wild here. China has really put a lot of effort into their ag, their Ministry of Ag, and has decided that they really don't want to be that dependent for their food source. And so they have put in a lot of agriculture that have tried farmers grow more, a lot of incentives, like that, a lot of work into their seed, trying to create a high yield strength corn. And in the last 10 years, they've actually expanded their production so much they are increasing. They increased in the last 10 years by 1.4 billion bushels. Quite a bit. And so what does it mean? It means essentially is there's more corn in the world, and we're producing more corn, so someone's got to have a place for it to go. And if China is already using their own corn and stockpiling their own corn, that means everybody else is buying corn for it to go. And China, they can they have a hard time producing soybeans. They tried, they're not very good at it, and so they continue to produce corn as they can. All right. All right. U.S. corn ending stocks versus stocks use ratio. This is something that I used to hear a lot when I was sitting on the other side of the table, and I thought, okay, I don't know what that means. So essentially what we're looking at here is the US is currently sitting at a 13.6 stocks to use ratio with 2 billion bushels per hour. Means we've got a lot of free corn. It's a lot. Okay. We produce a lot of corn. You can see the chart jump here. And what we're seeing for reference, low stocks would be less than 10%. Neutral is 10 to 13. And heavy, meaning pretty burdensome, we have a hard time doing anything with it, is 14 to 50%. At 13.6, we are approaching dangerous territory. The last time we were above 15 was, you can see the chart there, right in the middle. Last time we were there, we had futures with 3 in front of it. As a matter of fact, the last time we were really concerned, we were almost pushing 3 billion bushels per hour right before the duration of 2019, 2020. And I was buying corn for 280. So the fact that we've held it as well as we have has been pretty remarkable where we're sitting. So the world of corn ending stocks, you can see a little bit of a different picture. I don't have a lot of corn. They got a lot of people to feed, they got a lot of pockets to feed, they hold on to a lot of corn. US holds on to plenty. 2 different lines here are the black is the actual world ending stocks, and then the red is minus China. We oftentimes just look at it as a whole. We don't really know if China will oftentimes like to change their numbers. But what this shows us is there is a decent amount of corn in the world. We're currently sitting at 23%. A tight world corn stocks would be less than 20. We're sitting at a neutral position between 20 and 25%. And then heavy is over 25%. So again, 23%, we're technically neutral, we're hit out there. Okay. All right. So for world corn trade, US still is the #1 exporter of corn with 40% of the market share, followed closely by South America, both Brazil and Argentina. Where does it go? I think a lot of people might be surprised to learn that Mexico is a very large importer of corn. As a matter of fact, Mexico imports 40% of US corn. Why is that a big deal? Because a couple of years ago, when Mexico came out and they were not going to import corn, that was a big problem. That was 40% of our market. That's not a good thing. We did get that squared away, and that's a good thing. We've seen really good exports from some of the smaller countries, the smaller Asian countries as well. Seeing a really strong feed demand, which has been really good. Here's US corn exports. Increased over the last 4 years. This year being the highest ever. We increased our exportations by 100 million bushels. Like I said, where is that all going? To feed. That's what they're saying it's going for. Global feed demand is very strong. This number in particular, this export number, is the only reason that our stocks ratio ending up US is. If this number were to drop, we would rocket above that 15% and we would not be in a good place. So this is a really good thing for us to have. These corn exports are great. We need to keep them going. This time of year, we are now 29% ahead in sales than we were last year and 69% ahead in the inspection. So that means that people who are buying them are actually showing up to get them. We've seen it before where people buy them and they don't show up for it. That doesn't happen so at all. All right, so what does that mean for corn as a whole? Corn as a whole is going to have some issues this year. A lot of people are looking at planting more corn this year. We're already tipping on the point where we have too much corn. If we continue to grow more corn, and right now I think the average trade expectation for acres in March is another 95 million acres. And this time I sit and talk to you guys. I buy grain for the entire state of Minnesota, and I talk to a lot of farmers. 95% of the farmers that I have talked to this year are planning on going more corn or all corn. That means if we do 95 million acres, and even just a decent crop, doesn't even have to be a good crop, that we're going to have a lot of corn. That export number, we're going to have to put past our record numbers. We're going to have to export even more. Ethanol plants are going to have to be crushing at full capacity. We are going to have so much corn, we're not going to know what to do with it. Your prices are going to really struggle. futures, you've already seen it, futures has had a really hard time. We're only trading in a 5 to 6 cent band most days. We're not really getting volatility. We're hitting resistance levels and not really being able to push past them. We produce a lot of corn again this year. You can expect basis is going to be weaker, especially if we export the rail. Basis is going to loosen out. It's really corn's going to have a tough time holding its ground in the fours if we continue to go on the path that we're on. Now, we're also a couple months out from planting. A lot of things, we're talking about 95 million acres. I don't know what spring looks like. All of us here know that spring is really volatile. Could it go really well like last year for most people? Yes. Could it go really well? Also, yes. So these are just speculative numbers until the crop actually hits the ground. Now, soybeans. All right. So world soybean production, the greenish color is Brazil. Brazil continues to expand at a rapid rate. Argentina, we actually saw them drop back this year. And the US has kind of remained fairly steady. Our record number of corn acres, wheat acres are kind of just chilling. We're not necessarily producing more, that's just kind of stayed. Brazil is now number 1. We have fought with them for the last couple of years who is better at producing soybeans. This year they are number 1 by 1 bushel. But overall, it's a pretty tight race across the country to see who's better at producing them. And that has a lot to do with seed technology that goes into the Brazil, South America, Brazil and Argentina. They're moving up those ranks as well, and they're getting a lot better at it. All right, soybean ending stocks are a lot better picture in my mind than corn. So right now, we're sitting at 300 million bushel carryout with an 8.6 stocks to use ratio. So again, low or tight would be considered 5% or lower. 7 to 10 is considered neutral, which is where we're at. And anything over 10% starts to get heavy, right? So we're sitting in a pretty neutral territory. It doesn't sound like we're going to have a lot more soybean acres. We might get less soybean acres. So situation, much more stability as far as the let's go. It's a little bit different here on the world. So US, we're borderlining on tight. The world is actually sitting pretty heavy. We're sitting at 29% in our stocks, which is 30% is heavy, less than 20% low, and then that middle range there is neutral, but we are just about to tip as far as heavy. Why is that? Because South America is producing a lot of corn. And these stocks, again, you can see China's holding fairly consistent in that light blue color. Light blue color, they're a fairly consistent large amount of soybeans. They've really grown a lot in bringing infrastructure and money into South America so that they can be able to do that. Soybean exports to the US, not necessarily a pretty picture, right? It's consistently declined over the last several years and pretty hurtful. And you'll see we got a pretty significant 2018 into 19. Right? That was the US-Chinese trade war. We saw our exports drop off fairly significantly. And that's really where China decided to invest a lot of money into South America. We did pretty much consistent and going forward from there. This is a real problem for us. If we were to continue to drop, you can see our balance sheet get heavier. But the reason why this slide is big is because of things like happened last week. Wednesday, Trump tweeted out that he expects China to start importing more soybeans. Big deal, because that's not factored into these numbers. If these numbers were to jump significantly, or even just a little bit, that 8.6 that we're currently sitting at, more than likely below 7, we're now considered tight. What does that trigger? That means the funds are gonna start buying, that gives us support to your soybean market. We saw pretty significant rally last week, and we're still feeling a lot of the aftereffects this week. Soybean trade. Brazil has become a monster. We never really remember, sure, like I said, in 2018. Brazil really has taken the cake on this one. They are the number one exporter, and we're trying to be the number one buyer. It's become quite the thing there. The problem is that we are expensive. We have a strong US dollar. And when we have rallies in our market, specifically the rally that we had during harvest, the late rally in November, we priced ourselves out of the export market really, really quickly. So even though we were the available source, we had things come in the market. Our markets run the way they do. Into harvest, we price ourselves out super quickly. Everyone shifts their focus back to Brazil. I put meal up here this year. 80% of our soybeans that get ground turn into meal. It's a huge factor of us as far as prices go, because it supports our soybean futures, so that we have the soy crush complex, which is soybeans, soy oil, and soy meal. And in order for crush to stay strong, we need meal and oil to stay strong. Means our meal exports need to be good, and we need to be moving here. So the U.S. is holding sugar here pretty good, but we're seeing a lot of self coming into that, and a lot of those to the market as well. Crush. The largest soybean crush that we've ever seen. This is fantastic for us. We need this to increase. We are now crushing, this last report we had, we're crushing 230 million bushels a month. That shoes this is what helped our exports look terrible. For years, what saved our funds. Our crush accounts for 57% of our soybean demand. So we're crushing 57% of our soybeans here in the US, and we're moving them out. That's what supports your basis levels and your prices. So this is super important for us. If we want crush to continue to increase, to stay high, and because we have bioproducts of crush, so they support this moving up. A couple years ago, for those of you who are here, you probably saw a slide we had as all the soybean crush facility expansion, half of them before off in pricing. Kind of back off, we're looking at this fall as expanding these plants. So we're seeing the continue to increase. Is it possible that these other crush expansion plants come online in the future? Yes, it is. But for right now, everybody's kind of waiting. There is a new EPA meeting with biodiesel, soybean oil. If we see that move through with what they're asking for, then we're likely see this increase. But for right now, everybody's just kind of waiting and making investments in existing plants so that they can crush more, because it's a lot easier to scale back than it is to invest billions into a plant only for negative margins for some time. So this has been super helpful for us here in the US. Like I said, this is what supports us in our futures prices. So going for what does this mean for soybeans? So soybeans, in my opinion, have a lot better picture. We're likely not going to get a massive amount of soybean acres. We have good crush demand, and while exports are the greatest, there is a possibility that they do increase. You've already seen it in our futures, where we're a lot more volatile than we have in corn. We've been seeing swings as far as 20 and 30 direction. I expect that to continue. Like I said, the balance sheet moves a lot faster than so you're going to see those volatilities. You're going to see the swings either direction. Take advantage of them while they're there. This goes for both corn and soybeans. We have moved into a more historical context than we have for the last 5 or 6 years. People who forward market are likely going to be better off. Opportunities price are going to be in that February, March, and June, July. You're gonna want to price early and you're gonna want to take advantage of your offer systems because these rallies are going to be short-lived. Until something changes on either the supply or demand side, and I'm not talking about little bits of drought, talking about big changes, you're going to see short-lived rallies. They're gonna be quick, flash and pans, they're gonna bounce and be gone before you know it. So utilize your offer systems, whatever it is you're taking your green, so that you can capitalize on the there. I would say 75% of our offers currently filled in the overnights. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I am not trading in the morning. So market early, use your insurance APH, use those to your advantage. You guys have these for a reason. You're not be afraid of forward marketing. Anything that's above your break even is a good sale at this point. I say it every year. I think we're up to like 23 out of the last 25 years now. But February insurance price ends up being in the top for marketing. At 23 out of the last 25 years. So if you can get something that's above the February insurance price, you're doing well. So keep that in mind. Like I said, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what the market, what's going to go on with planting. It will completely change in 2 months. But given the numbers that we have right now, this is our expectations. Short pops and corn is going to continue to struggle. If we have a large corn crop, beans should remain fairly steady. Yes. I think I stayed within it this time. All right. If anybody has any questions, please find me. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Next up, I got Mark's to talk about our PLC. So we're gonna have to make a decision, like I talked earlier. It might not be this fall, but we're gonna have to make a decision again on our PLC and sign up in that episode. So I'll turn it over to him.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Try not to walk around. And I always say, as we talk about SEO, SEO, our PLC, there's a test for all the acronyms we're going to cover at the end. So probably piggyback off of some of the things Matt covered. We talked about a lot of the crop insurance side. What I look at as opportunity for you all to find those coverages where you need. That ties into a lot of the changes that are giving you guys coverage on the ARC and PLC Title I programs. So I'll cover. Matt. Technical difficulties. I'll keep going. The first slide, Matt kind of already mentioned it as far as the delay and when you guys can sign up. That was typically March 15th each year. It is, to Matt's point, really advancing longer that extension. It's delayed by FSA. That leads into a bit more educated decision as far as what you guys are deciding when you are enrolling in our PLC. I believe it was 2020 when you guys were enrolling in our PLC for crop years. And you've already moved it what happened in 2019. I don't know if we get to that point where it gets delayed, but more as far as the county yields or the price of city, that helps lead into you guys making a little bit of a decision on the ARC PLC. That based on a little bit of these things already. Big one coming in with this year going out in 2025. Whether you guys are typically majority of our producers in our area, our county, or PLC. One big bill is going into what these payments are going to be for fall of 2026, is that you guys are going to get the higher of that payment. As of now, we're tracking some pretty good payments, varies off of county, but there's a lot of tools out there where you guys can use as far as going and estimating what some of those payments are going to be come this fall. We start triggering some of those payments. Another big benefit is Matt talked about the ARC County increase. Previously, you had that 10% ban from 86 down to 76. Now that has increased where that trigger starts at 90%, and you're also getting a 12% ban. So you talk about those increased subsidies on ECO and SEO. Now you're also getting some increased coverage on the ARC County side. So that's another benefit. I'll also touch base on some of the reference prices that have changed, coming out of the One Big Beautiful Bill. That increases those amounts of coverages, which then leads to, if there's gonna be some payments on those, that gives you guys a higher trigger. So all these are benefits to help build into your guys' risk management when you start looking at ECO, SEO, your base policy, and then how the Title I programs pair into that. Big one also is the SEO compatible. Matt talked about that previously. If you elected our county, that took SEO off the table. Now that's a new tool that you guys can use, which is also subsidized at 80%. So there's different options, different opportunities for you all to look at when you guys are start meeting with the team going into sales closing. Some payments increase, Matt touched a little bit on that. The annual election, kind of touch base on that. Make sure, I was at a meeting yesterday, FSA offices, they don't know when those dates are gonna come. Same thing, Matt talked on the base acres. Just kind of as we get these information on the company side, we all work with the agents to make sure you guys know when these dates are available. So you're not missing whether it's signing up for ARC or PLC, and also not missing when you can update your base acres. Okay, this comes out of the One Big Beautiful Bill with these reference prices increase for you. So those prices cannot drop below that. I'll show you guys a little chart going into 2026 where these prices are actually sitting quite a bit higher, which then helps you guys establish whether you're going to get paid come October of 2027. Here is the PLC reference prices. There's a lot of math as far as taking out the Olympic average and establishing those prices, and then taking 88% of that. When you start talking about PLC, you got the 442, 1071, and 635. I like this chart. If you look at basically that blue chart, kind of over on the left, that's establishing your PLC effective reference price when you guys get the time to enroll. If you look into the kind of the fourth column over, that's your 90% of your ARC guarantee that you're going to get. I talked a little bit about previously that was 86%. You bump that up to 90 with also the increases of those effective reference prices. That gets you some pretty good prices that you're locking in on whether it's ARC or PLC. I have another slide that's following this. Maybe I'll leave this slide up so I can kind of highlight it. For example, Matt touched base on when we are tracking these prices. These prices are then referenced off the marketing year average price. So I'll use corn and beans, for example. We don't start tracking that marketing year average price, not even started until September 1st of this fall, going into end of August of next year. And that's the cash price nationwide of US producers are getting for your crops. So we start talking about, I'll use the fourth column over our county as an example. Your reference price is 453. If I just average out some projections, right now I looked the other day on K-State and USDA. If I average them out, they're projecting for crop year 26 going into 27, right around 450. So that's triggering a loss on our county. Same math, you see the third line from the bottom there, soybeans, our county, your reference price is 1095. If I average out what K-State and USDA is projecting for 26 going into 27, right now they're projecting average out 1045. So that's calculating a 50-cent loss on our county with those same reference prices. So just give you an idea how those reference prices really make those PLC and our county decisions more important as far as tying into some of those potential payments you're going to get. I was looking at some slides. The CBO, they released some information as far as how these prices are going to affect U.S. producers going from crop year 26 all the way into crop year 2030 and 31. The amount of payments you guys are going to get on those Title I, which is your ARC and PLC, is exponentially increasing. So it's becoming a bigger factor as far as looking at your guys' cost, your break even, tying it into the ECO, SEO, and your base policy benefits, because there's going to be some payments that are more than likely going to be triggered on these decisions. So it's really important to lean in the tools that Matt and David, everybody has to offer to how you can effectively make the best decision for your farms. I got some slides, but I also add in, it's really important. We have these established prices, but it's also important to remember you guys can make these elections by your farm number. So say, for example, if you're thinking one thing, projecting on beans versus corn or different farm numbers, you do not have to make the same election by crop. You can and look at your farm numbers and do different things with what you're thinking in relative to what you think maybe with those yields or what those prices might be coming into this summer, then tracking those prices going into the fall. Okay, just kind of a summary. A lot of the things as far as the basics of PLC in our county didn't change, besides increasing that coverage level on our county and then bumping up those effective reference prices for you. So a lot of benefits. When you start talking about PLC, you're looking at strictly price. I showed you guys that price. If you think that marketing year average price is going to fall below that, I might start looking at PLC. Our county, you got the different reference prices, but you're also tracking your county yields. That's important. These are based off of the county yields and also your base acres. It's not based off your planted acres. So just some different things to look at. Also piggybacking off of, make sure you guys take advantage of updating those base acres. If there's payments on it, you can bump those base acres. That just means more money in your pocket come October when some of those payments are released. Okay, just some different formulas. I always say everybody's going to come in and talk to Matt and everybody and ask you how these work if you got questions. Strictly when you start looking at PLC, you're looking at price. And then you're going to get that 88% of the Olympic average when you're getting paid on 85% of your base acres. Okay, just kind of highlighting, it's not dependent on your yields, based on your own base acres, not your planted acres. Best if you're looking just for that price decline on those crops for that farm. Our county, then you're also tying into that reference price on the our county price in conjunction what those county yields are, establishing if you drop below that revenue. So it's a little bit different as far as the revenue side ties into not just that price drop, because you also have the yields built into the factor when you start looking at our county. I'd say I agree with that, like probably 95% of the guys I work with, as far as even in South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota, typically they lean towards our county, just because there's more effective prices on that with the revenue. But now in conjunction with those prices, might be a good time to look at, hey, how does PLC work? How does our county, what works best for my farms as I project forward going into this summer and then into next fall when those prices are established. Okay, here's just an example. These numbers change. This is actually from this fall, but this is just some different tools that you can go in and run in your different counties based off your crop, just to give you guys an idea of some expected payments, which we're still tracking that marketing year average price. Those numbers could change, but as of now, Matt and the team, they have some tools out there where they can run some calculations to see what you guys may or may not get paid on your different base acre crops come this fall. And then it's just a comparison. And Matt obviously has all these slides and you guys can look at these. This one that I'll point out on the bottom is that landlord or tenant decision. If you're at crop shares, when you start talking about those farm numbers, you all have to make the same election. So it's important to get on the same page, have these conversations when that enrollment date is released, and then decide what you want to elect when you're looking at those different farm numbers. Okay, just some fine tunes, kind of highlighting some of the things we've already talked about. And then we'll keep you updated. I know all the companies will work with Matt and the team as far as letting you know when that enrollment is available for you guys. Is there any questions before I hand it over back to Matt? I know I'm holding you guys up a break, so.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Thank you. We're gonna take a little break. Yeah. We're taking a 5-minute break. Just kind of recap of, maybe just talk about what we talked about. A lot of these subsidies, as I was up at a meeting up in North Dakota about a month ago, and then a guy from the USDA, and one of the reasons all these subsidies are coming. Okay, we got the beginning farmer, we have the 3 to 5% increase, we have all this stuff coming. I think the goal is what they're looking at is there's all these government payments coming out. There's still potentially more coming. I think their goal is to subsidize crop insurance enough that eventually start cutting back these ad hoc payments. I think that's the goal. Okay. We're gonna take a 5-minute break and then we'll get started right away. We got cookies, water over the corner, then we'll get going.
in 2025. Incredible. And what's happening is the cost of everything, we've been worried about inflation, right? But the cost of everything that can be made is going to come down in price. Have you anybody priced a TV lately? My mom's 95. My brothers and I decided, mom, who has a religious experience every day of watching Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy, right? She decided we got to get her a 85-inch big screen TV. Went to Costco, $697. What did Mabel ask us when we were checking out? You want the 3-year protection plan for $199? Said, heck no, Mabel, we're going to throw this TV away and buy the next one for $199, right? So deflation is coming. And I got a computer up here that I'm using. You got one at home, desktop under your desk. Can do 50 million calculations per second, right? But if you really want to speed that thing up, you can buy one chip from NVIDIA, put it in your computer for $249, and it'll do 127 trillion calculations per second. Okay, I'm not a mathematician, but that's a boost, you know what I mean? And what happened now, we have quantum computers. Quantum computers can do 100 quintillion transactions per second. That's 100 with 18 zeros. And we're going to start using quantum sensors on satellites. We're going to start analyzing crops. It's going to be amazing. And we now have AI that is average IQ in America is about 100. Matt draws it down a little bit, but David makes up the difference. But anyway, Einstein's about 155. AI today is 155. When we hook them up to the quantum computers, it's going to be around 1600. But what did we tell our kids a couple of years ago? Learn AI, be a coder, right? You're going to be fine forever. 99% of all the programming today done by computers, right? We tell our kids now they'll learn to be a plumber or something, right? So today, the human sets the goal, but now the computer's doing the bulk of the work. And what happens? If I ask you to pull your phone out, it's just full of apps, right? And those aren't going away, but they're going behind the scenes. What you're going to do is you're going to start talking to your AI agent, Grok, Gemini 3, ChatGPT, and you're just going to tell them what you want. Hey, buy one of these dog food. That's all you're going to say. And it's going to go and knows you buy that Purina 50-pound bag, and it's going to go out, find it at the cheapest price, it'll deliver it this afternoon, charge your credit card, it'll be at your house. Incredible things that have happened. And Walmart has 2.1 million employees. They said that every job there is going to change. I don't know if you knew this, I work part-time, at Walmart every time I go shopping there. But you can't use the break room, they kick me right out of it. But anyway, they're working on agentic commerce, right? So they want to think about what you want before you even think you want. So it's incredible what's happening. And we're no longer, we invented AI, but we're now just discovering what AI knows. Kind of an incredible place to be. And AI is really trying to be human. So let's say you call your mortgage company or something. You're trying to, what are you doing? Press 1 for this and 2 for that, and you just want to get a human, right? Well, you're going to get an agent, and that agent wants you to think it's human. So it starts stuttering a little bit. It's trying to maybe speak in a southern drawl, so you think it's a human. So that they want to be human pretty bad, and they're evolving in a way. When Mariana 1 and Willow, the two quantum computers, started talking, they made up their own language, evolving greatly. And designing products, we can't even figure out what they're doing. So when those two chips I was telling you about, that are more powerful than all the computers in the world combined, when they were made, they're not a liquid, it's not a gas, it's not a solid. It's a new material called neuromorphic, right? And it thinks like the human brain. It doesn't do 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. It can do multiple things at once. It's incredible. And what we're going to see is a lot of new technology coming. So, in education, architecture, but also on the farm. So you got a tractor that's broken. You're going to be able to plug your computer into that tractor. It's going to tell you what's wrong, and then it's going to pop up in a hologram and show you exactly how to fix it. So again, farmer can't be replaced, but he's going to be enhanced. And the robotic future is here. Sometimes we like to put that, that genie back in the bottle, or whatever it's gonna be empty. Humanoid robots gonna transform the world. We got 8 billion people on the planet, 9 billion cell phones. They say by 2040, we're gonna have about that many humanoid robots. You can buy one from Tesla in 2026, probably around $30,000 each. And ag is gonna be the early adopters of these, right? Who drives self-driving vehicles today? We just bought a new car and wanted to self-driving. Oh, another $20,000. We said, not getting that. Well, who drives self-driving cars today? Agriculture. What did my grandpa say? I'm not using auto steer. I got the straightest roads in the county. What do we use today? Auto steer, baby. All right, and you're going to forget that Tesla made electric vehicles because they're making humanoid robots today. 2 of their lines, the S and the X, are stopping making it. They're going to make robots in those plants. And today they had Optimus Prime 1, Optimus Prime 2. They're on generation 3. And 2 is helping them make 3. They'll have 1 million robots done by the end of 2026, and they want to have 1 billion in just a couple of years. A lot of other companies have it. Tesla's on the forefront. They got the best one. And they're going to be in healthcare. They're going to be in home care. And they're going to be in the backyard. They're going to be on the farm. Right? So today, if you go to the doctor and you say, Doc, I have a problem. And he says, let me get a blood test and an x-ray and all this. 27% of the time he gets it right the first time. You do that with AI and AI sensors, it's 90% of the time right the first time. So when that little robot's going through your field and you tell it to spray or pull weeds or whatever, it's going to find it 90% of the time, do it right the first time. You're going to use robots. They're going to become the ag workforce. What are they going to do? Anything you don't want to do, right? Anything involving manure, bending over, weeding. Going to be swarms of robots. And anything dangerous, right? When I worked at ADM a long time ago, we used to be able to get in the bid, right? Now you got to have a letter from the president and signed by Congress to get in the bid. Sweetwater's moving. But I'm going to tell you, the humanoid robot, my brother's name's Juan. He thinks number 1 robot's going to be called Juan Deere 3000. But if Juan Deere gets in there with Sweetwater, we're not going to care. We can fix it, right? So I'm at a conference early January. What's all the discussion about? Ag's going to be the big user of robots. How are we going to set up the stores in ag markets like right here where they can buy them, rent them, maybe only want them for a few months, lease them, fix them, repair them? Who's going to do it? And a lot of the conference was on who's going to fund that. And Dana White just sold the UFC $4 billion Paramount. And they asked him, oh, it's a great deal and all that. When you really ask him why, he said, today, humans are fighting in the UFC, they tap out at the end, right? Humanoid robots are going to crush each other, it'll be like the gladiator days. He said, I'm worried about that. So, what is my advice on AI? You got to use it, right? You got to use it. So if you want to write an email, anything written, use Claude, right? It's fabulous. If you need to brainstorm some new ideas, ChatGPT. You have some difficult decisions to make, use Grok. You want to learn a new skill, use Gemini. Repetitive tasks, Mammoth AI. And you don't have to learn AI. AI is going to learn you. So it's going to give your farm specific information. What should you do? Give it a task. Let the AI work the night shift. So get one of those AI agents that you like and give it a job. What do you want to do? Hey, analyze the overnight reports that my ADM friend was talking about last night. All right, what should I do? Recap the WASI report for me. Look at input prices. Give it a job, and at 5 o'clock in the morning, it'll give you an email and tell you what the overnight should do. Relevant news. Give me the relevant news to farming. It'll do it for you every morning without fail. Is it going to be perfect? No, but you'll be able to tweak it. You'll be able to ask it better questions. So marketing ideas, lending reports, board reports, it'll do it for you. The farmer's going to be smarter. Where are we right now? 70% of our kids under 24 years old get almost all of their calories from ultra-processed food, refined carbs, and sugar. All right, and 30% of kids under 24 have a chronic disease. If you're under 34 and you're 57% of kids, 25 to 34, have a chronic disease. And if you're old, 90% of people over 65 have a chronic disease. We're eating terrible. And they switched one group of kids from eating no ultra-processed food. They started just eating meat and vegetables, good real food. 55% increase in their cognitive function and test scores, just by doing that one thing alone. How many of you remember the movie where Mel Gibson could read women's minds? Well, I want that gift, you know what I mean? But remember, he's running through the park, and all of a sudden, all the women were running, and he was getting his brain overload. What? They worry about everything. I said, what does the American farmer do? Worries about everything, right? Margins, and we lost 257,000 farmers the last 10 years. I wish it was because they're making so much money in the Bahamas, sucking the margarita. But we have First Southern Bank in Tennessee not going to do ag loans anymore. Hello? Farm bill delayed, worried about everything. But the chart on the right is kind of small, but it shows a combine in the year 2000, 25 years ago, cost $162,500, brand new. Today, $1.35 billion. That's 9 times more. I want you to find something that went up 9 times more in 25 years. Healthcare didn't, college didn't, right? So you're dealing with higher input prices and machinery prices. We got a lot of issues on the farm. Talk a minute about healthcare. What's going on in healthcare? Today, you're going to be able to go to the doctor, get a blood test that'll give you 60 cancer markers. Costs $1,500 today. In 2 years, that's going to be $300. So you young people, first time I went to the doctor the other day, and he says, Steve, you got to have a colonoscopy. Young people, that's not the funnest test ever yet. I have a Toyota up there. But anyway, what if we didn't have to do that? What if we just get a blood test for $300, right? And we're digitizing biology, right? So what happens? Anybody ever heard of anything that Pfizer or Moderna or anything cured? No, 133 million Americans have either diabetes or pre-diabetic right now. If you get it when you're 40 years old, you're going to spend almost $1 million on insulin, right? Any incentive to cure that? No. But AI doesn't care about next quarter's profit, right? We're going to start curing diseases. And robots going to start doing surgery. The first surgery ever to happen that was perfectly done, no mistakes, was done by a robot in 2025. Incredible change that's happened. And CRISPR, gene editing, is coming to animals, to plants, and to humans. Incredible things that happen. We're going to be able to take things like peanut allergies out. You grow a corn here, and what happens? Doesn't rain, doesn't grow. But the weed in your driveway grows, right? What if we could take DNA out of that, put it in the corn plant, and make it grow? We're working on that right now. What if we could make pigs less susceptible to disease? Working on that too. If you don't remember anything I say today, remember baby KJ, born in January 2025, had a genetic disorder, was going to die in a week. Told the parents, sorry, baby has a horrible disease. Said, but we have an idea. We think we can gene edit this disease out of it, but we got to have your permission. They said, do it. They took genes out of that baby, edited them, put them back into the liver. Baby KJ was alive all through 2025. And in January 2026, they said, baby KJ is just going to have normal problems and live like a regular baby. That costs millions of dollars, but what's going to happen over time? That's going to come down. People are going to be healthy. What are they going to do? They're going to eat more, right? And because we can bioreplicate things, take a cell out of your body and make more of it, and then 3D print anything you want, like a human heart, with your own cells. They're already doing it. One of those hearts is 3D printed and one's real. Hard to tell the difference. One on the left is real, one on the right, 3D printed. Incredible. Talk about energy. Energy equals intelligence. We have to have energy for AI, right? The Chinese, this Chinaman said, AI and AGI will rule the world, and we need power to do it. What happened? We had a rule not that long ago that said you can't drill in the Gulf of Mexico. Somebody changed the name of it because they didn't put the coordinates in there. Now we can drill in the Gulf of America. Why does that matter? Because in the Midwest, we're running out of power. We need more electricity. Why? Because we're doing it all with renewables. I'm not against renewables. I don't like solar because it takes wood, farm ground. But we need 100 gigawatts, and we're only making about 62, and we're going to need 200 in just a couple of years. What are we going to have to do with it? Nuclear power, next gen nuke. I'm not talking about the old, take 50 years to build. I'm talking about modular nukes. The one I like is Baylor Atomics. Isaiah Taylor's the CEO. He says, I want to make your power bill so cheap you forget what it costs, like your garbage bill. Right? Incredible things that are happening. Keros is another one. Google's got them building 7 plants right now. Microsoft just fired back up 3 Mile Island. Meta bought all the power out of Clinton, Illinois power plant. Dave said I could take home some firewood so I could cook something up on the way home because I live near that plant. So we need a biofuel policy, sustainable aviation fuel, and green diesel. You say, well, the new administration doesn't care about it, like Europe does. So if you're United or Delta Airlines, you want to land your plane in Paris, you got to use SAF. Let's give it to them, right? It's made out of ethanol. We just got to how do we make corn super cheap? We made 17 billion bushels of it. How do we make SAF cheap? We just make a lot more of it. We got to do it. And the West Coast has already decided they want green diesel. Let's give it to them, right? Let's not use the fake used cooking oil from China where they throw a French fry in some Malaysian palm oil and call it used cooking oil. Let's give them soybean oil from Minnesota, right? Let's do it. And one of the coolest things I heard is that 53,000 ships in the world pollute more than all the cars, billions of cars in the world. We can do a blend, have to retrofit the engines, but we can do a blend and they could cut the pollution, not talking about climate, cut the pollution of the ships dramatically by using ethanol. Let's do that, right? Let's help the American farmer. Talk a little about the future of food. One time we were all going to eat, crickets and cockroaches and chocolate-covered mealworms, But what happened? We're going to eat more meat, real food, right? Even the New York Times says meat is back and fake meat is dead. All right, not necessarily the farmer's best publication, right? And what we discovered is that meat is high in omega-3 and omega-6. And we can test for that. What if we stopped just testing for 2 yellow corn and we started looking at the nutrients in corn and paying the farmer more? We started looking at omega-3 and 6 in meat and started paying the farmer more. So real food is the future. And if you're under 40 in here, I call you the pre-chronic group, right? Because you're looking at your grandparents and you're saying, we're not doing that, right? We're not going to just get old and lay in a hospital bed or nursing home for all these years. We can do better. And so what are young people doing? They're eating more protein. They said ultra-processed food is crap, right? And so what happened? Heinz Kraft went together, $15 billion merger. What happened? It broke up in 2025. Why? Young people don't want ultra-processed food, right? They're doing better. 12% of the population is on GLP-1s. It'll be 30% in just a couple of years. What's happening? If you're a Budweiser distributor in here, you know that 72% of Americans you said they used to drink every week. It's down to 52%. They're blaming GLP-1s. So the world's changing. And we don't have to ban high fructose corn syrup. What if we took the same ingredients in high fructose corn syrup, which is corn, and we made tagatose, bonumose, or Rogaine, which is a low glycemic sweetener, right? And we can do that. Now, does ADM and Cargill and all that want to do that? No. Costs a lot of money, so maybe we got to kick them in the rock. They can do it, right? And what if we added one bio, which is odorless, tasteless fiber, started making healthier food for our kids, mixing real meat in there and vegetables, given the school lunch program and making them not obese. Future, we're a great country, right? $100 billion a year, 42 million Americans getting food stamps. What a great country we are. But you know that $20 billion of that $100 billion goes to soda pop, sugar treats, and Doritos, right? So what if we stop that? We start training people to eat better. And a single mom, Steve's got 2 kids, right? And I get $500 a month. Right now, the USDA is working on saying that if I will buy healthy food at the grocery store, not at Casey's buying pizza and Doritos, but if I'm at Kroger or Walmart or wherever, My point of sale register will make that $500, $700 if I buy good food. But if I buy junk, it goes down to 300. That's gonna happen in the next 2 years. Rick Rawlins was at the meeting, I said, that's gonna happen. I'm gonna read the ag market outlook to my friend from ADM, good job. ADM, American farmer is no longer the low cost producer. You gotta turn products, commodities into products, right? Land value is not coming down. What's a farmer do? Borrows $1 million, buries it in the ground, wants to pull $1.1 million out. What have we been pulling out? About 900,000, right? That's not sustainable. Who wants to help you? Crop insurance agent. They love you. They want you to make money. Start with them. Get more advice than ever, right? The one big beautiful bill, great with crop insurance. I don't farm, but I got a garden. I'm going to buy ACO and SEO. It's 80% subsidized. Come on, baby. Buy. And I tell my farmer friends, stop buying non-income producing assets, right? Nathan, my buddy from Warrenburg, he's got, 4 jet skis, 2 side-by-sides, a trailer, vacation home. I said, Nathan, you got to cut back. He said, I'm going to do it, Steve. I told my wife we're selling 2 of the jet skis, getting rid of 1 side-by-side, and we're firing the pool boys. His wife came out, you're just intimidated by his muscles. He says, Steve, my argument is we don't have a pool. So anyway, promotions, all right? Is there anything you can do to increase your revenue? You got to do it. I'm at this conference. All I'm talking about is traceability, traceability. See what you can do with that. 80% of American farm families have some sort of income off the farm. They used to be 60% before COVID. Now, 8 out of 10 farmers in here doing something off the farm. Somebody. Incredible. All hands on deck. What can you do? How about a fertilizer operation? How about ag tourism? One of my buddies in crop insurance, he converted a bin into an apartment. Things rented all the time. They sit out front of it and look at it and go, is that brown cow where the chocolate milk comes from? Grandma's houses, ag tourism, did a speakeasy. Got a fish farm. Guys could do coho, salmon, and minnows. Made $1 million. He said, I hate it, stinky old barn. We're going to build another one. So made $1 million. And I got a friend in Peoria, Illinois, was taking his corn and making moonshine. Got arrested. But after he got out of jail, he got the proper permits. Now he's got a place called Whiskey Acres. Makes more money on Whiskey Acres than he does farming. Right? So we're gonna expand it. Ag tourism is exploding. Put some tiny homes on a little piece of your property. People rent it like crazy, right? Got a friend that converted a barn into a wedding venue, $12,000 a weekend. Bioluminescent plants. Charles Hodgkinson is the CEO, came up with the idea to grow these plants. Maybe we can do that, right? So I think the decisions you're making right now can impact generations. And the reason this country is great is because we don't spend money on food. Thank you, American farm. We spend 10% of our income on food. You live in Europe, it's almost 20%. You live in the Middle East, it's 48% of your income, right? You spend 48% of your income, you can't get those skinny jeans like Matt likes and the Gucci handbag. You can't afford it, right? So I know that's a lot to go through in a short period of time. Hopefully you leave here, you go home and get one beer, 3,000, give you a nice foot massage for 2 hours. So God bless you guys. Thank you for what you do. American Farmers, what makes us great. I can't say thank you enough. And I just want you to have a great year. Get through 26. Better prices are coming. They are. We can't have global warming weather forever, right? We're going to have a problem somewhere in the world. Something like Carlos, Commie, China. I hope so. We'll feed them, right? We're good people. So do what you can to get through this year. Better prices are coming. All right, Matt. Turn it back over. Thank you, guys. God bless you.
Get their next presentation up. All right, give me again. So I'm going to talk about putting a crop insurance plan together. As an agent and a farmer, I'm going through a lot of the same decisions that you are. And one thing I want to throw out there, you've heard a lot of information today, and there's going to be a lot of decisions to make, not only your crop insurance, but at FSA with base acres and ARC PLC. What I'm here to tell you, and those that have been with us for a long time, We're here to help you. You have the ability to go to any agent you want. Crop insurance is all the same price in the bottom line. But what else can your agent do for you? If you need help on our PLC, come to us. If you need help on your base acres, once we know how the program's going to work, come to us. We can help you. So again, agent here, farmer northeast of Hector. One of the things we go through this time of year, and especially this year with all the changes, to stay status quo maybe isn't the right decision because of all the things that have come to us that have cheapened it up, and there's better options now. But the first thing you need to know is how much coverage do you need? How much coverage do you need to have on your hand or on your farm to protect yourself and be able to sleep at night? The first thing you need to know is knowing your costs. Dave does a great job sitting down with guys, going through their costs, helping them out to figure out what is their cost of production. Hopefully everyone in this room knows what it costs them to grow an acre of corn, an acre of beans. You know where you're at, okay? Because if you know that, you know maybe how much risk you have or how much gap you have from where your insurance stops to potentially where your cost of production is. So know all your costs. Don't fool yourself. Don't try to cheat the system. Obviously this winter, things aren't as good as what they were. When I was going through my Excel spreadsheet, I kind of tapped at the screen going, uh-oh, that ain't good. It's not what it was a couple of years ago. Put their costs in what they actually are. And then find what your average is, okay? So what your average cost per bushel is. So take your cost of production, divided by your cost, or your APH divided by your cost, see where you're at. Are you producing corn for $4 a bushel, $4.50? Where are you at? Make sure you have a marketing plan, have something at least written down, and be prepared and organized going to banks. Dave has told me this for years. I've had bankers tell me this. If you go prepared and organized to a bank, you're probably going to get a slight reduction in interest just for that. So how much should you cover? So I pulled the data from Iowa State University, where I pull from every year. They say in 2026, it's going to cost approximately $911.98 to grow an acre of corn. If I would poll this room, everyone in this room would have a different number. This is just what they came for an average. You take a 200 bushel yield, you divide it by 450, or divided that, 911 divided by the 200, it comes to 455 break even. If you only have 180 bushel APH, now it's over $5 break even. Now the day I did this slide, now the markets are up since I did this, but we might be over $4 now. It's Central United, but it was $3.95 in the fall, okay, for cash price. Beans, even worse, okay? You look at the cost of production, it's the highest I think they've ever had for soybeans, $679. Again, you take a 55 bushel average yield, you need $12.34 to break even, okay? If you have a 52 bushel yield, that's what it is. Again, the prices are up. I did this about a week ago. Beans are up another 12 cents last time I looked today. But the day I did this, it was under 10 bucks. So you can see we have a little bit of an issue. We have a production cost issue and the price of commodity issue. So when you ask yourself, what am I trying to insure and how much do I need? Do I need to cover my gap? And I'm going to talk about that, where insurance could potentially get you just with multi-peril, and where's your cost of production. And I will tell you, this year might be the biggest gap just looking at multi-peril compared to your cost of production that we've ever had, okay? A little scary. It's hail been an issue. Now, last year we had some fields that got hailed on. There's some stuff that got wiped out, but it wasn't horrible considering our book of business. But 4 of the last 5 years have been pretty bad. Are you trying to insure more revenue? I'm a huge revenue guy, okay? This is why I like the ECO products over the top, because I buy RP, it's revenue based, so I can get more revenue. So if that price falls out of bed, if we have 95 million acres of corn and we have a good crop, what's the price of corn potentially going to do? It might go down, okay? Look at those ARC PLC changes. Again, you can buy now SCO with your ARC counting, which is a great thing. If you talk to your bank, what do they want? What would they like to see you at? What are you comfortable with? The middle of July, if you lay in bed at night as the weather's going to turn, are you happy with what you have for coverage? Or are you wishing you would have taken more? And look at your unit structures. And I really want you to look, especially this year, I'll get to it. If you've been enterprise on your beans in the past, strongly look this year at going optional. I'll show you why. So the day I did this, the price of corn was $4.57. This is the set price for February average for December corn futures. Today we're at $4.58. Okay, so we're up a little bit. You can see last year we're lower than last year, and the year before we're kind of in that same realm. But you remember 23 and 22, we had some high commodity prices. Okay, so we started out good. Problem being, Production costs haven't fallen as fast as the price of corn has fallen. So you look at historical, this goes back to 2005, and I'm going to turn my attention over to this far table. We got some young bucks. Yes, corn was $2.02 in 2005. We could talk all about LDPs that happened back then that don't happen anymore. But you can see the last couple of years, I have the spring price and then the fall price. You can see the last 3 years we've fallen off. But you look at 22, 21, we were high. The concerning thing on this is you look starting the fall of 2022, 686, the spring, 591, the fall, 488, the next in 2024, 466, and then 416. See a trend? Again, I'm not sure what's going to happen. Obviously, we rebounded last spring, which was great, and we've gotten to that 480, 58 number. I think a month and a half ago, it looked pretty bleak. We've had a really nice run up, especially in the beans, to get something higher. Beans, again, when I talk about the run up, I did this a couple days ago. We're at 1093 today. Okay, setting that price. I'm not saying we'll get to 11, but man, it'd sure be nice. So we're getting higher than what we were last year, but still quite a bit cheaper than 24 and a lot cheaper than 23 and 22. So you can see the last 3 years we had a dip in that market. We're from fall to spring, and as you can see, going back 22, we were fall of 22, 1433, 1376, 1284, 1186, 1003. You kind of see that trend. It's been going down. Again, we're setting up this spring better than I thought we would be, and hopefully it stays there. This chart, I want to spend a little time on. I pull this up every year, and I added this here, and this is a little discerning, right? And this is why I believe a lot of these SCO and ECO products, these over-the-top products, are really going to be viable this year. So what this is, it goes back to 2010. And what I looked at is what you could buy for insurance is the blue line compared to Iowa State's costs. 2010, 11, 12. It was great. You can insure way more than your cost of production just using 80%. Okay. Then what happened? The market started to fall. But look at the costs. It took 3-4 years for them to finally get to a point where kind of the markets are at. As you move forward to 22, 23, you saw the same thing. We had a good years. We could insure over $1,000. And as the markets have fallen, our production costs haven't. Okay, that's discerning. So you look at this chart. When I look at that 190 bushel APH, looking at that, what is your gap? Well, if you have $911 into it, but you're only getting $694 at 80% insurance, that's $217 gap. Can you afford to have that gap? Now, you could go to 85, and the rule of thumb, that will gain you $40 to $50, but that still gets you similar to what we were last year. Now, the thing of this is, I was looking at this the other day. Look at our other time frame where farming wasn't as good. Look at 17, 18, 19, and 20. We had 45, 32, 77, and $59 gap. If you just would have went to 85, it would have wiped out 2 of those gaps to be a positive. 20 would have been closed, and we also had a $20 gap. So in those poor times, you could insure just with your multi-peril to get to a 0. This year, you can't. Beans, kind of the same scenario, and probably the worst it's been. And look at the production costs, that red line the last 4 years. It's kind of been stagnant. It's gone down a little bit, but really not much. But because the price of commodity has dropped so much, we can't insure what we could, where we, to get up to that cost of production. So same thing, potentially using a 52 bushel APH, using that spring price, you have a $228 gap. With beans, you might get $25 every time you jump. Again, kind of in trouble. And again, look back in that 17, 18 where times were tough. We had, even though the prices were low, production costs had fallen. Okay, production costs haven't fallen yet. We're the highest we've been on beans. This I pulled off the USDA, kind of a, I want to say neat, but it's kind of eye-opening. So what it shows is that gray line, or the tan line that's squiggly, that's the futures price of corn. The red line indicates what the cost of productions were. So if you remember back in 2020 crop, that was probably the cheapest, and stuff started to rise. And from 21 to 22, our production costs rose 26.3%. After that, the price of corn has kind of fallen out of bed from where that future high was, but the red line indicates the cost of production hasn't moved. Okay, that's trouble. Usually, we saw it multiple times. Usually, as the price of corn goes up, production costs don't follow as fast on the way up. And on the other side, when the price of corn starts to fall, the production costs don't fall as fast as the price of corn. My point of all this, know your break-evens. Know where you're at. This is a drought monitor from last year at our meeting. You can see we're a little dry. Don't take much stock into winter droughts. Obviously, we got pretty wet last summer in areas, a lot wet in some areas. As I fast forward into this year, we're sitting in pretty good shape. Okay, the last one I pulled up, we looked at Illinois and Indiana, they're fairly dry. You know, who knows what spring and summer are going to bring. This chart, though it doesn't look like much, and I'm not much of a technician on the computer to build all this stuff, but this is very important. It's going to go back to what I said earlier. When you're building your insurance risk management plan, start with your multi-peril. That's where you start. Build that up to the level that you're comfortable with on your farm. Why? It gives you the most coverage. It gives you the most causes of collection. It protects you if you take revenue protection. It protects price, yield, up, down, the whole gamut. If you got to replant, prevent, plant, everything. After that, once you're happy with where your multi-peril at, then look over the top for other options. Protect your gap. So you can buy other gap policies, either the ECO, the SCO. We have the band and gap and ramp, all these products, the RPP. There's other products that you can buy over the top, but some of these products don't give you as much coverage as what the stuff on the bottom does. It covers everything on the bottom. As you jump up the tiers, you got to have certain things happen. After that, let's look at your hail plan. Where are you at? And after that, maybe some add-on products that maybe just an extra replant policy. Now, with this chart, it doesn't mean that if you don't buy a gap policy, that doesn't mean not to buy a hail policy. I'm just saying, when you buy your insurance, look at the stuff that gives you the most ability to collect and tier it down that way, okay? So again, multi-peril is the best bang for your buck. 99% of our people take revenue protection. I know some have dabbled in the revenue protection harvest price exclusion. This can be very dangerous, especially if the price goes up, that you don't get that new fall harvest guarantee. So for example, where could it go bad? 2012, if the guy took it, Illinois and Indiana, they had 100 bushel of corn in those states. Corn went from, I believe, $565 to $750. They gave up $300 an acre on their insurance. That's why people don't do it. It's highly subsidized, like I talked earlier. It's fairly low cost for what you get, and there's other coverage and stuff that are part of it. Now, the day I did my quotes, again, how the markets have changed, I used 455 the day I did this, and the volatility factor of 15%. This is Renville County corn. Every county is going to be slightly different, and depending on your APHs, depending on your trend yield adjusted yield, and depending on your rate yield, it's two different things. Your rate yield is what you actually have, and the trend yield adjustment, that's kind of with the add-ons to get it to where they're looking at your guarantee. That's what it's based on. The bigger spread between those, it's going to cost you a little bit more. Okay, so if you look on top, you got revenue protection. The RP protects you if the price goes down, price goes up. Revenue protection with the harvest price exclusion doesn't give you that new revenue guarantee if the price goes up. Could be dangerous if the markets go way up. And yield protection just protects yield. That's it. Okay. So most people take revenue protection. We'll look at enterprise and optional. You can see the differences in prices there. They do give you a heck of a discount if you go in enterprise, if you qualify. Okay. So if you look at 85% using that scenario of 215 bushel, gives you $831. And that spot you still have a gap. Now you can see the enterprise to optional, it is a little bit more expensive on corn. We have seen a shift of guys maybe going back to an optional unit, you know, but in spending that extra money. Beans, again, the day I did this, it was 1075. It's now 1093. A couple things I want to talk about. The volatility when I did this day was 0.12. It's now 0.13, what they're expecting. Still quite a bit cheaper than last year, which is making your insurance cheaper. So if you follow down that revenue protection and you look at enterprise and optional, we go 85%, you're at $493 of coverage. Okay. But I want you to look at the spread between optional and enterprise. $7. Okay. It seemed like that spread has maybe fallen a little bit. What can you get for $7 with the hail? $80 a comp 2 plus. If you ask me what would you rather have, optional units or that $80 a hail, I'll take optional units all day, especially on soybeans. I went on a lot of hail calls the last 5-8 years. I've been on fields that the beans have basically been toast. The cornfield was, you know, got some hail, but it was early, and the cornfield still went 220 bushel, and the bean field ended up being replanted. It seems like the hail, those events affect soybeans more than corn. So if you still are enterprise units on your beans, strongly look at going optional. I could literally spend an hour on this slide. I'm not going to bore you. I'm standing between a couple speakers and dinner. I will not do that. But my point of all this is there's a lot of additional products you could buy over the top. Okay, from a lot of companies that we work with. Some of them work similar, some of them are a little different, but there's a lot of things we can buy over the top to help ensure that gap that's on your farm to start. Hail insurance for one, right? We can buy additional coverage that gets you up to 95% coverage on your farm. So multi-peril stops at 85. We have products that can get you to 95% on your farm. We have additional price products that we can add on to the price in the spring or fall on top of where the, if we end up at 456, we can add on to that. Okay, another way to get more coverage. And then we also have products that add on price to a yield loss only. This was big in the sugar beets. So sugar beets last year, the price was 19.7 cents. This year it's 17.1 cents. You're insuring less. We have products for about $6 a penny that can get you higher coverage. Okay, so we can get more coverage if you have a loss. And then we're gonna look at those additional products. And again, they're county-based. Can't stress this enough. They're county-based. The SEO up to 86% for your multi-peril lens, and then ECO up from 86 to 95. The beauty of these, because these are highly subsidized, we have products that can go alongside of the ECO and SEO to give you the advantage to collect on your farm. Okay, they put them together, it gets the subsidy of the ECO and then puts your farm off to the side. Now, why is this good? Well, two things can happen with ECO. There's good and there's bad. We'll talk about the good first. If we see 95 million acres of corn and the price falls out of bed, we could see some big revenue guarantees, even on a decent county crop. I'll show some slides on that. So it could work good. I didn't collect on my corn this year. Well, I'll probably collect on the ECO. Conversely, and why I say this multiple times, do not cut your multi-peril back to buy ECO or SEO. Do not do it. Where can it go bad? You cut your multi-peril back to 70%. Well, I'm going to take SEO, the county-based one, from 70 to 86, and then I'm going to take the 86 to 95 with the ECO. You get a hailstorm that comes through your farm, and the rest of the county goes really good, and you go bad. Okay, you might not collect a penny on SEO and ECO, even though your farm got smoked. Okay, that could be dangerous. But there's ways to use that subsidy with the ECO to add on those band products to have both. So you can collect if the county has a problem or if you have a problem. So we look at that SEO like I talked before. We've talked about the coverages. It goes up to 80%. That's where their subsidy. It makes a huge difference for this next year. The SEO coverage, again, you can buy now SEO with that ARC coverage. And again, it looks at county yields. So, well, how does it work? Well, it looks at expected yield. So on the screen up on top, I have the expected county yields for McLeod County. Look at that as like the county APH, right? It's going to use the same spring price, fall price, how it does with your crop insurance. And at the end of the year, they're going to come with what the actual yield did to see if you have a loss, okay? ECO, again, goes from 86 to 90 or 95, and you're regardless, you can take the ARC VLC election no matter what. And again, every county has different estimated yields for this coming year. Now, with this chart, this is a kind of the same thing I showed before, but now it has ECO and SEO on it. So let's go down to the revenue protection. We're going to go down to the 95 or 85% level. So we buy ECO at that 9% band for $8.19. Last year it was 15 or 16. The year before it was 25. Okay, it really got cheap. Got you $90 of coverage. You can throw on that SEO. It's only 61 cents. That'll get you another 10 bucks of coverage. With all that, magically it gets you to $929 of coverage. Okay, if you drop back, you're going to see the ECO stays at the same price all the way through for the revenue portion. Now, the ECO and SEO works just like how your underlying multi-peril would work. So if you go across, you can see ECO with harvest revenue protection, harvest price exclusion is a little cheaper, but it works the same as your underlying. So whatever your underlying is, that's the way your ECO is going to work. If you drop back to 80%, now you're buying 6% ECO. That goes up. That gets you that $29 or $58 worth of coverage. Now, if you buy these banded products, this is the beauty of it, using that subsidy to your advantage. If I would buy a banded product by myself and go from 85 to 95%, it's going to cost me about 40 bucks for 90-some dollars of coverage. To me, if I spend $1 on insurance, I want at least the ability to get 3 back. Okay, that's my rule of thumb. The beauty with this, using that ECO product with the subsidy and merge it with the band product, they cheapen it up. So now all of a sudden that band product by itself is about $12.78. And then I can add ECO with it, that 8 bucks. For 20 bucks, I get about $90 of coverage. And I'll not only insure if the county goes bad or if I go bad. For me, that worked great this year because I did good, I guess, in general, but the county, it didn't do as good. So I probably will collect an ECO. Why don't I know? Why don't I know? Because we won't know until June, July, when the price or the yields are updated from RMA, then we'll know. Beans, the same thing. You look at that ECO coverage at 85% multi-peril. You're at, say, the $19, you're gonna do optional units. You can buy ECO and the SCO, and that adds up some more coverage. That's $551. Still well below that or $679, but you can also put that band coverage on, which is pretty inexpensive to get you 95% coverage on your farm and that top 9% on the county. So how often does ECO collect, right? That's the question. Well, I can tell you the numbers up to 2024. I can't tell you 25 yet. I'll know in June, July. So I use Renville County. The expected yield for Renville County and the APH for the year is 206 bushel. Okay, so you can see in 24, you can see the expected county yield versus the final yield. ECO max payment for ECO in 24 you would have got your whole $90. In 2013, you would have got all but 2%. So it has to go down to 86. Oh, you got a whole payment there too. So you would have got your full payment. Well, what about this year? That's what we want to know. Are we going to get more money from it? Well, I can't tell you yet, but I can show you this map. It might be a little hard to tell. I went to BLH. I wasn't the best math student in the world, but I can do some backwards math. And we knew the spring price, we knew the fall price, and we knew the expected yield. So we can do the math backwards to figure out where the trigger yields are going to be. So in Renville County, I know it's kind of hard to see. If Renville County average is less than 218.5, we're going to start collecting. Okay, McLeod County, my eyesight isn't the best. 213, 216. Okay. Maybe you can collect. Candy Ohio County, 213. I'm not a smart man, but I bet Candy Ohio County is going to max out with all the rain they had. Okay. So we'll know June, July, and as soon as we know, you'll know. Soybeans the same way, maybe hasn't given as much payment for the ECO, but you can see in 24, it maxed coverage. We got a couple percent in 23, but the thing with the bean price, again, I don't know what's going to happen. We're starting a little bit higher than last year. Hopefully we get to that $11 mark. Again, I look at the ECO as kind of a put option, right? If that market falls off, that price falls out, it's pretty cheap coverage. Okay. Beans, kind of the same thing. Renville is 53.3. As you look at the other counties, they're all kind of in there where the trigger yields would start for ECO. Hail insurance, a lot of you about hail insurance, our hail sales have gone up a lot the last couple of years. Why? We've had some really bad hailstorms. I've never seen, was it 2020, the year that you could see the trees, the leaves getting stripped from the trees. I've never seen that before. Some bad hailstorms. This was my son on one of our sweet corn fields a couple years ago. This is the one, if you saw the pictures at Oakdale Country Club, this is what it was. I was up north and I thought my kids, I thought they were playing a joke on me. We left them in charge of spraying the beets that day, and my brother and I were gone. And all of a sudden my middle son called and said, Dad, it looks like it's going to rain. Should I stop? And I looked at the radar. Well, there's nothing there. And then there's Johnny Holmes concert that night. So I'm like, you just want to go to Johnny Holmes. And about 20 minutes later, my other son called me and sent me this picture. And I'm like, oh, this is not good. But a bad storm. This is why you take hail insurance. I know I'm kind of running late. It's a private product. Collect if you have hail, right? Good thing, especially if you're enterprising your units, throw some hail on top. So you have some individual unit coverages. Here's all the other things that it insures. Kind of funny story. I paid one time on a guy that the neighbor's cows got out and got into 25 acres of his cornfield. So it pays more than just hail. We've had huge losses the last couple of years. You can buy also wind coverage on top of the hail if that's something that you want. So how does hail work? It's all about deductibles, right? How fast do you want to collect or how slow you want to collect? The faster you collect, the more it's going to cost. The slower you collect, you need more damage. It's going to be cheaper. So I just put up a couple different policies: the basic, Comp 2 Plus, and the excess PI10. You can see the chart on the bottom. If you spent $100, where do you start getting paid? Comp 2 Plus pays you 1 to 1 up to 10, 2 to 1 after that. Basic pays 1 to 1. Okay, the excess 10 IP doesn't start paying until 10%. And the prices are off to the side. You can see hail. Some townships are really expensive, and some townships it's very inexpensive. I got a guy east of me that his Comp 2 rates on his beans are like $3. I got some guys down south that it's almost $10. So every township has a different rate. Same on soybeans. Again, depending on how fast you want to collect, there's a lot of different options you can do. It's all about how fast you want to collect. So plan ideas. What should I do, right? I'm kind of, Matt, you've gone through a lot of stuff today. We have tons of products. We have multiple companies. We have lots of options. There's no cookie cutter design. When it's kind of fun when people come in, well, what did the last guy do? Well, yeah, do people kind of buy the same? Somewhat, but everyone has a different theory and a different risk, what they want to take. For sure, look at buying up your revenue protection. That's number one. Max out your MPICI coverage if you're worried about this year. And an SCO and ECO are a good fit, again, with a solid multi-peril policy underneath. Do not cut back to 70% in your multi-peril to buy these products. Get your multi-peril where it needs to be first. So looking at corn, go 80-85. I think that's a good option. Optional enterprise units. Look at some additional coverage. We can sit down and go through some products with you, especially the ECO and SCO. They're easy ones to quote, easy ones to explain. And if you're looking for more, let's look at some other options for you that maybe are for your individual farm. And potentially look at hail policy, especially if you're more spread out. If you get wiped, you might have some farms that do, some farms that don't. It's fairly inexpensive, especially on corn. With these products, you can hopefully get up to your $900. That's where you're at. Soybeans, again, I strongly look, if your enterprise units, go to optional. Okay, I think it's a good play. Look at buying some of those extra coverages. Beans is going to be the tough one. Okay, unless you have super high APHs, it's going to be really tough to cover that gap. SCO, ECO might not do it. Maybe looking at some of those banned products that can get you up to 95% is probably a good thing. Look at your different hail coverages. If you are enterprise on your beans, strongly look at doing hail on top of it. That does it acre by acre. Look at the optional units. So kind of a summary. Look at your enterprise and optional units. Make sure you trend yield adjust your yields. If you're with us, you have trend yield adjusted yields. So recap, what is trend yield adjustment? Came back in about 2012. What it did is put a factor on your APHs. So every county has a different number, but we're going to say corn is about 2.5 bushel. So what it does is every year that you go back in your database, it might go back 20 years. And for me, I've got some corn yields that go back 25 and more rotated, that every year you go back in that database, that's 2.5 bushel approximately. So if I had a 200 bushel yield last year in my database this year, it goes 202.5. The year before, it goes 5 bushel more, and 7.5 bushel more. For most of you, it adds 12 to 16 bushel. For those more rotated, like the biggest I've seen is 27. So if you're with us, you are trend yield adjusted yields. Look at some other private products. Multi-peril is, again, the best bang for your buck, but let's look at all the options too. And again, I've said this multiple times, be very hesitant in reducing your multi-peril to buy ECO or MC or SCO. It is county-based product, okay? Don't do it. Main thing, buy something that gives you the ability to collect. Don't come in and buy 70% and then we have a bad year and you come in, well, geez, the insurance didn't work. Well, no, it worked how you bought it. You didn't buy enough to give you the ability to collect. Buy something that gives you the ability to collect. And let us sit down with you and help you advise. So now is the time to plan. After this meeting, we're starting to take appointments to come on in our office. If you never met with us, if you just want to meet with us, even if you're another agent, we'd love to sit down with you and just go through a plan. But if you are with us, let's go down. We'll we'll go through your stuff. We're going to go through your maps. We're going to advise you what we think you should do. Going back to those, the ARC stuff and the base acres, again, we're here to help you. We're trying to set ourselves apart from everybody else. So if you need help with that, again, come to us. We're glad to help. So make calls into our office. Give us a call. We're glad to sit down. Let's go through your stuff and make sure you get a good, sound risk management plan for 26. So with all that, any questions? As you can see, I get pretty excited talking about insurance. Why am I so excited? When I first started back at the farm, my dad and my uncle gave us jobs that, you need to start doing stuff, and no one wanted to take care of the insurance. So we're going to let Matt do it. And I find it really fun. And I kind of consider myself an insurance geek. My wife just calls me a geek, but that's secondary. But I really enjoy doing this. I love working with guys and working with the risk management plan to make sure that they're set where they need to be. So no questions. I'm going to turn it over to Dave. Dave and Matt are going to come up and they're going to, I guess, give you the planning talk.
sure you've already looked at the sheets that I did, the corn projection and the soybean projection. And it doesn't look like there's gonna be a lot of money in this. But it can get better. And we can, the key is that you put your own numbers in there. Go through this, put your own numbers. I didn't put any government payment numbers because each one of you might have a different number that you put in there. The same thing if you bought ECO last year, there's a good chance you're gonna collect on crop insurance. But anyway, put your numbers in there. Come up with your break even. Look at what your gap is. Figure it out on your own farm unit. Then you can bring that in to us and we can talk about writing the best plan. What is the best? So, Matt, talk about the soybeans.
Our soybean plan is based on using 1089 price, and obviously, same thing Dad said with the corn. Government payments, we aren't quite sure, so we're using a zero there, but use your numbers that you're figuring for your county in specific. Going through your numbers, tightening things down, we do have quite the gap on beans, but we can find a way to utilize some of these extra products. Again, ECO could be a potential product. And then as well as RPD band, and then there's some other coverages that these companies offer as well.
When you buy crop insurance multi-peril, it costs the same from agent to agent. So when if you all buy crop insurance, what are you really buying? Buying an agent, right? Anyway, we love to serve you and we love to be your good agent. Anyway, I'm gonna introduce Paul Nufford. He's our main speaker today, and thank you, Dave.
Go ahead and get the slides changed over. The only problem with being the last speaker, everybody else has already said everything I'm gonna say, but maybe not. I think I'll have quite a bit to say here, so I can go that far, so.
Oh, it's not showing up.
Not showing up. It's always technical difficulties. We had it.
I have to click for your phone, I'm sorry.
It's not on the screen though.
It's not on the screen. You have your change slides.
Here, I got the flash drive. But you have the PowerPoint, it's right there.
I don't know why it's not.
Can you put it on the?
It should automatically come up.
If you click any of the other ones, it's still
Yeah.
not coming up, is it? And coming up on this computer. Oh, there we are. Yeah, what happened to the screen? Is it HDMI thing? There's, that came back on. And you're duping the screen. Maybe we'll take the lunch break and go back and I'll speak after lunch. Yes. It's weird. Oh, there, now we got, so we got somebody swimming.
The other, I don't have your old line.
Oh, you can undo it. You go into the, yeah. Okay. So, right. It's not the. Good. Right there. Restore. Okay, so now it's restored. I'm back in the regular soldier that you had. Problem is on the screen, it's not showing any.
Yeah, it won't show up until like this.
Yes. This is time for a bio break.
What's happening? It comes up on the screen, but it doesn't go across.
Just checking to see if you're. Hey, I think we're getting it. And can go to here. And let me go F5. Bigger. Oh, that's good. You. And that's there. Hey, we got it. Sorry about that. Even though I'm old, I almost know technology, so. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I always like to start off with this slide. Let's see, we have a little, I guess we don't have a little pointer. No pointer. That's a Maskey Harris 92H. H stands for hillside. A little hard to tell in that photo, but that's about a 35% slope where that little, I'm standing above the Harris. That's me about age 3 years old, something like that. My dad's driving or operating the combine. Back underneath the auger where you see that brush in the background, that's about a 60% slope. Sort of interesting. Now I do see some younger people here. I see a lot of people my age, but I see some younger people here. Notice all the advanced safety apparatus on that combine. One of my favorite sayings is "Cat have 9 lives, farm boys have 99 lives," and I used about 98 of them. The reason, a lot of people, especially out here, where we call you guys flatlanders. People ask me, why do you farm that ground? Because it's steep, and you'll see in another slide why it can be dangerous. But back in 1982, that field did 140 bushels to the acre. And every year, when we have a good year, it'll do 160, 170 bushels to the acre. So that's why we continue to farm it. But here's what a combine looks like when you flip it over. I'd been operating combines for my dad full-time about age 14. And for some reason, I had a friend ask me to spend the night. So I spent the night, or my dad said, yeah, go ahead and spend the night. I'll just operate the combine in the morning. You come out in the morning. I'm on the way out there. Turns out my dad was going up, not a steep slope, maybe 40%, somewhere in there. And 2-day-old combine, the transmission gear blew up. Suddenly he's going backwards in the hillside. He turned in the hillside too fast and it flipped over. And you can't really tell there, but that's the cab. And my dad had a throttle lever stuck through his thigh. So he was pinned inside the combine. The EMTs finally show up and they're discussing, and by now I'm here and I'm listening to them discuss how we're going to get my dad out of there. They finally handed a hacksaw to my dad and he had to hacksaw himself out of the combine. Now I had told that story to a city slicker a few years ago. The guy goes, your dad had to cut off his leg? Just the throttle lever. Most of this, and part of this has been discussed already, but I'll probably go into a little bit more details on some of the ARC and reference price and so on. Like I said, when you're the last speaker, you sort of maybe repeat some stuff, but it's good to understand this. So let's go ahead and get started. Certainly, we have an increase in reference price, but why do we have that? Reference prices were originally put into law back in 2014 with the 2014 Farm Bill. It's what we call the statutory reference price. And until OBA, I call it OBA, one big beautiful bill. But until OBA came along, the statutory reference price never gone up. But we know in the last 12 years, input costs, the cost of production, we've already seen a lot of those slides. Cost of production has gone up a lot. Now, in 2018, with that farm bill, we had what was called effective reference prices, and we'll talk about that in a little bit here, where we're able, on a temporary basis, allow the price to go up, but it could also go down. And that's happened a few times where the price has gone up, a little bit more support, but then the price went all the way back down. So the key here is that we did not have a cross-the-board percentage increase. You'll notice that rice went up by about 21%, whereas corn only went up by about 11%, to approximately almost 11%. And part of that reason is it's a budget reason. You know, rice, there's only 4 million acres of rice. There's 95, almost 100 million acres of corn. So corn is definitely going to have the biggest effect on the budget. Now, soybeans got a pretty good increase, 19%. We have never, since 2014, we have never ever paid out a payment for soybeans under PLC. We've paid it out over ARC, so that's why a lot of you would sign up for ARC, but we've never paid out anything on PLC. Now, wheat got a pretty good healthy increase, and these are the crops that I grow. I have farms, not large amount of acres, but 1,200 acres in total. I have farms in Iowa, Missouri, and Washington State. So the crops I grow: wheat, corn, soybeans, chickpeas, and dry peas. Those are the 5 primary crops I grow. I don't know why I waste my time on peas, because I don't make any money on it. That's a different story. Now, this is a little tougher to read. Hopefully it's readable in your printout, but here's all the changes on the reference price, the effective reference price, and so on. But let's talk about the effective reference price. Under the old rules, we took the Olympic average, and we're having the Olympics going on right now. I was watching curling and some other things last night. How many rings are on the Olympic flag? We got 5. Olympic average means we take the last 5 years, and it's sort of a year in arrears because we don't know the 25 MYA price yet, or the 24 MYA price when we're doing 25. So you take the last 5 years, you throw out the high, throw out the low, take the average of the 3. Then under the old rules, we multiplied that by 85%. And if that number was higher than the statutory reference price, we got to bump it up to that level. However, we could not go higher than 115%. Couldn't go higher than 15% more. Now, the Senate on the Republican side back last year was hoping to last year was hoping to increase that to 20%, but that didn't happen. But what they were proposing is now we're going to multiply that by 88%, and that did happen. So now we get a sort of a bump on what that number is. Now, remember 2014 through 2026, the statutory reference price never changed. Starting in 2031, every single year, the statutory reference price will be bumped up by 0.5%, not 1%, but half of that, 0.5%. And eventually it's going to reach a ceiling of 113%, because that's the maximum that it could be. So corn, let's say corn is 410 is the reference price. We take 113% of 410, we're in that 460, 463 range, somewhere in there. And all the other crops will have exactly the same bump every single year. So we now have a mechanism. Now, it might not catch up with inflation, but at least we have a mechanism to get that price going up. Changes to ARC, this was already mentioned a little bit. Remember, under the old rules, just similar to crop insurance, it was at 86% level. So that first 14% reduction, you got no payment. Now you start getting a payment at 90%. Under the old rules, your maximum payment was 10% of what we call benchmark revenue, which was that benchmark price times your benchmark yield for your county. Now, instead of being 10% of that number, it is 12% of that number. And just have a quick example here, just to give you an idea of what the differences might be. And I think this would be very applicable in your part of the country. Let's pretend like your benchmark revenue was $1,200. We know this year it's going to be less than that, but let's just use $1,200. Under the old rules, your maximum payment was gonna be $120 per acre. Now it's bumped up to $144 per acre. And your payment starts being collected. You start getting a payment at 1,080 of harvest revenue instead of 1,032. Now let's pretend like your final revenue is $950. Under the old rules, you would have collected, now collected, it's gone up from $82 up to $130, that extra $48. And the maximum payment is 144, so you still collect 130, whereas under the old one, you would only collected 120. So pretty good deal. Now, as people have mentioned, I've started getting a lot of phone calls. I do a blog called farmcpareport.com. Got quite a few readers. I was getting phone calls. I was getting emails from farmers and more importantly from their bankers because they want to know what type of payment you're going to collect starting in October. And the tone of it was, hey, Paul, my farmer or I signed up for ARC and under these new rules, because remember you had to sign up before OBA came out, under these new rules, PLC is going to pay 4 times higher. And I'm going to get screwed under the situation. Well, Congress realized that. So for your 2025 crop only, you automatically get the higher of the two. And I'm sort of a math nerd, so I wanted to calculate, well, if I know that you automatically get PLC on all your acres, on a national basis, we can calculate what the PLC payment will be. Now let's just pick on corn. It's a little, it's probably a little hard to see the screen, but we got about 92 million acres. Remember, it's base acres, not planted acres. You're paid on base acres. So you take 92 million total acres. We don't care if you sign up for ARC or PLC. You multiply it by the payment difference. So it's 442 is the effective reference price. Right now, USDA is projecting 410. So that extra 32 cents, that's the payment amount. So 32 cents times 92 million acres. And then we have to multiply it by the national PLC yield, and USDA provides us all of this data. That's 140 bushels per acre. So if we go through that math, maybe, well, let's look on here. So based on September, that would have been a payment of about $6.7 billion. Because back in September, they were projecting an MYA price of $3.90. Now over on ARC, that's a lot more difficult to calculate. There's about 20,000 line items in the USDA spreadsheet dealing with all the ARC counties and all the different crops. There you have to, what's the final yield going to be? Well, we know we have a record crop. I was calculating this based on 103% of the benchmark yield. I think the final number across the nation is going to be 105 to 106%. So I don't think ARC on a national basis, if we looked at it nationally, would be more than PLC, but individual counties, you're going to have counties somewhere around the country where the yield was low enough that that payment's going to be more than the PLC payment. So back in September, I was calculating at a minimum about 14 billion, because remember we then have to multiply everything by 85%. I was calculating about 14 billion. If we go ahead, December it dropped to about 12 billion. And then based on January, it dropped down to about 11.5 billion. The key, remember when we had the WASD report come out last month? What happened to the price of corn on that day? Does anybody remember? Not the one that just came out this week, but the one that came out last month, the price of corn did what? Dropped 25 cents. They bumped up the MYA price by a dime. So even though the reaction that day was negative, they said, hey, you're not going to collect $4 on average, we're going to collect $4.10. Every dime, up or down, either increases the payment by at least 1.3 billion or reduces the payment by 1.3 billion. So corn is the big dog. Half of the payments going out in October of this year is going to be corn, or more than half. So that's just something to be aware of. Now, they mentioned base acres. We've had base acres for many, many years, 20, 30, 40 years. We've never been able to increase base acres. Back in 2014, you could reallocate base acres from like wheat to corn, corn to soybeans, soybeans to corn, whatever it might be. Now you automatically, and they're still going through, the FSA is still going through how they're gonna do this. You automatically get to increase your base acres if your farm allows it. Because your 156.ez is gonna tell you, hey, this farm has got total acres of 500, it's got tillable acres or crop acres of 485, and it's got base acres of 400. And if you planted 485 acres on that farm, and it was all to Title I crops, you're gonna get bumped up to 485 maybe. And I'll tell you why here maybe in a second. Matt had mentioned, I think it was Matt had mentioned that non-covered crops in this area, sugar beets, my area, green peas, where I grew up, green peas, that's a non-Title I crop. You get to include up to 15% of your total acres, your total planted acres. You get to include up to 15% of those acres in that calculation. You also get to include prevent planted acres. That's a big deal in the Dakotas, maybe not so big here, but could be. And then, as I think Matt said, he doesn't know any cotton farmers. I know some cotton farmers, but not in this area. You get to include the old cotton base. But when you go through all that analysis, it looks like there's about 40 to 50 million additional base acres under these calculations, and that's too much. So they drop it down to a cap of 30 million. So on average, across the country, we're going to get a 12% increase in base acres. But what does that mean to you? It means in your 26 crop that's going to be paid next year, if everything else is exactly the same, your payment's going to go up by 12%. Because your base acres went up by 12%. You're paid on base acres, not planted acres, you're paid on base acres. So your payment next year is going to be 12% higher than this year. Now let's just take a quick look at what the base acres look like. This, I think, was done by Fabry from the University of Missouri. Right now, across the board, other than soybeans, across the board, after this changes all goes through, and this is estimates, so it's going to be not the final, but it's going to be close. In every single case, you got more base acres than planted acres, other than soybeans. So corn, we're going to have 102 million base acres. We haven't hit 100 million acres of planted corn since what, the 1930s? We were close this year, 98. I think 26. You know, they're talking 95. I think we may hit 100. Yeah, we'll see. So it's just interesting. Again, you are not paid on your planted acres. You are paid on base acres. Here's a quick example. I pick on corn and green peas. Let's pretend like you only had 200 total acres that you planted, 100 acres of corn, and well, you had 100 base acres, and the other 100 acres had no base. You only had 100 base acres. In one situation, on average, you planted 175 acres of corn, and you planted 25 acres of green peas or sugar beets. Since 25 is less than 15% of 200, which is 30, you get to include all 25 acres of green peas as corn, because that's the only thing you planted otherwise was corn. So your base is going to go from 100 acres of corn up to 200 acres of corn. Pretty good deal. Now, if on average you planted 100 acres of corn and 100 acres of green peas, 100 is greater than 30, you only get to increase your base acres by 30. So now in this area, I know there's a fair amount of sugar beets, maybe there's some other vegetable crops. So you'll have to go, and again, USDA, local FSA office should have all these details as long as you've reported your planted acres. But, you know, the CBO is supposed to be this agency that does all these calculations correctly. They can't even get it right. So look at this little chart. This is just the top 7 crops, so to speak, most acres. They were at 237.3. They show a projection up to 270.3, which is 33 million acres. How many acres in total can we increase it by? 30. So they can't even get it right, so. Now, here's the big news, really. This is really probably what I need to be keying in on more than the other stuff. Let's pick on my 4 boys. I have 4 sons, 39, 37, 35, 33. Now, my wife's favorite saying when we have 4 boys that were teenagers is 1 boy, 1 brain, 2 boys, half a brain, 3 boys, no brain. We have 4. We're in a big deficit. So there was a lot of truth to that. But let's pretend like that they're farming. And let's pretend like they're farming 20,000 acres. None of them are farmers, but let's pretend. And so every year they're going to max out on the payment limits. They're going to max out. Under the old rules, that would have been 125,000 times 4 because they operated as a general partnership because that's what we had to do under the old rules. They operated as a general partnership. Now, I'm their dad, I'm their CPA. They come in and meet with me and I tell them, hey, you guys are idiots. You're paying way too much self-employment tax because you have this general partnership. If we restructure this as a what we call a manager-managed LLC, we're going to save $50,000, $75,000 in self-employment tax. And remember, all you farmers out here, you have 3 genetic chips implanted at birth. Number 1 chip, you shall buy as much land as you can during your lifetime. Number 2, you're going to buy as much green paint, red paint, yellow paint, whatever color equipment you want to buy. And then number 3, thou shalt not pay taxes. And that by far is the biggest genetic chip that you guys have. So let's be honest. So they think that's a great idea. We set up the LLC, then we file, or they file their Form 902 with the local FSA office, and the person tells them what? You went from 4 payment limits to 1. LLCs, S corporation, corporations only get 1 payment limit, no matter the number of owners. And so they have fought for many years to get this fixed. I think Senator Grassley from Iowa prevented it. Now he got overruled. We now have what's called qualified pass-through entities. So any LLC not taxed as a C corporation, any S corporation, any entity taxed as a partnership, any general partnership, any qualified joint venture. Those are the 5 types of what I call qualified pass-through entities. You then are going to have payment limits based on the number of equal owners. And I'll explain why here in a minute, why it needs to be equal owners. But many of you might farm as a C Corp. And under the old rules, when we had lower payments, lower reference prices, you never collected more than $125,000. I was talking to a friend of mine in Washington State. It's 2 brothers, mom and dad, not quite 4 equal owners. And under the old rules, they never went above $125,000. This year, they're projected that their total payments would be $500,000. And if they stay as a C corporation, they only collect $155,000. So they have switched over to an S corporation. So any of you out there that are farming as a C corporation, and let's say you're farming 3,000 acres or more, you're probably going to be, and you stay as a C corp, you're going to lose $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 of payments if you have 2 or 3 owners. There's only 1 owner and you're not married, only 1 owner, I don't care, but multiple owners, you got to be aware of that. Now, is this going to be effective for the 2025 crop year, which is what we're dealing with right now? I don't know. FSA has not given us any guidance yet. The reason I'm concerned is under the new FPA program that you're going to get paid at the end of this month. They told us that if you're a general partnership and you have 4, let's go back to my 4 boys, general partnership, 4 equal owners, they get 4 times 155,000, which is 620,000. But if they're an LLC or an S corporation, they get 155,000. Also, remember, unlike ECAP, a lot of you out here are thinking, well, ECAP, under ECAP, if your farm AGI was more than 75% of total AGI, you got a double payment or you got an extra payment limit. The FBA, you get 1 payment total. Doesn't matter if you're a farmer or not. If If you qualify as a farmer, doesn't matter, you only get 155,000. And I'll show a slide on that here in a minute. So I just don't know if it's gonna be effective for 2025. You gotta remember on your FSA form 902, which tells them what type of entity you are, the box says corporation. Doesn't say C Corp, doesn't say S Corp. So they may come out and say, hey, we're not gonna implement this until 2026. So something to be concerned about. Now, conversely, again, let's go back and pick on my 4 boys. We do all this planning. We now know that because they're 4 equal owners, we can switch from a general partnership over to an LLC, and we're gonna have 4 payment limits. Well, the law only changed it only changed payment limits. It did not change AGI, adjusted gross income. Under the current rules, older rules, partnerships and qualified joint ventures do not have an AGI test. It's at the partner level. However, LLCs and S corporations have an AGI limit, and it's 900,000. Now let's pretend like my boys, they have a typical income of $2 million from the LLC. It gets dropped down to them, it's $500,000 a piece. Not a big deal, because again, the testing is at their limit or at their situation, not at the entity level. Now, if it's at the entity level, we went from 4 payment limits to 1 payment limit, back to 4 payment limits, and if you're over 900,000, you go to 0, no payment. So what I'm telling everybody out here, until we get good guidance from the FSA, do not switch to an LLC if you are a general partnership right now. And also, I think they're going to be updating the definition of AGI for S corporations and LLCs. Now, I did have a discussion with the national office on this, not the person writing the rules, but I had a discussion, and they seem to indicate maybe we'll have the AGI similar to general partnerships where there is no testing at that entity level, but I wouldn't count on it. Because again, the law doesn't allow that, but this administration, most administrations, sometimes they rewrite the laws anyway. So we'll see what happens. Now, again, let's go back to my 4 boys. They were always going to qualify for a maximum payment limit of 125,000 times 4, 500,000. So if we didn't increase the payment limit, this really wouldn't help them. Well, they did increase the payment limit. It's now 155,000, indexed to inflation. And based on the guidance I saw 3 weeks ago, I think 3 weeks ago tomorrow, it looks like the payment limit for 2025 crop, what you're going to get paid in October, is 160,000. I thought it would start with the 26 crop, but it looks like it starts with the 25 crop, at least based on their guidance. So 160 this year, 164 next year. Now, they said you can't rely on that, but they were using the accurate numbers, so I think that's going to be it. So, why do I keep saying equal ownership? Again, let's pick on my 4 boys. 4 times 155,000 is $620,000. Oh, and on your handouts, there were 3 extra slides I threw in today, so you may go, where's those slides coming from? But they're there. So 620,000. But remember, when you have 4 boys, they're not all going to be equal. Or potentially they're not all equal. So let's pretend like my oldest son has 37%, my number 2 son has 18, my number 3 has 26, and then the number 4 has 19%. You're still going to max out at 620,000, but my number 1 son gets allocated 229,000 of payments. He can only get 155,000, so the LLC loses about 75,000. And in total, because of the number 3 son, it's about $80,000 reduction. So if you're thinking, yeah, husband and wife farmer, they're both signed up, they both have, so they have 2 payment limits. We'll bring in son, bring in daughter, we'll bring them into the LLC. And I always ask, well, are you going to bring them as equal owners? Well, no. Well, you don't get 3 payment limits. And actually, it wasn't really brought up, but well, brought up briefly. Remember, if you're a beginning farmer, your crop insurance subsidy is now for 10 years, not 5 years. It's not 10 percentage points, it's 15 percentage points in years 1 and 2, 13% year 3, 11% year 4, and then 10% for the next 6 years. Really, if you're bringing in kids to the operation, have them be their own farmer. You both for payment limit purposes and crop insurance subsidies. Definitely that's the way to go. Now, I just threw in this chart. Remember under ECAP, you had a $125,000 payment limit, but if you were a farmer, you automatically got another $125,000. And if you were what was called, are you doing specialty crops? Well, no, ECAP didn't have specialty crops. So really, effectively, for most of you, your payment limit was $250,000. Under FBA, only $155,000. Now your payment rate was higher, but here's the number of acres in order for you to max out. So now let's look at corn and soybeans, because that's probably the big crops in your area here. So under ECAP, you could have 5,826 acres. Again, if you're a farmer before you maxed out on your acres or on your payment. Under ECAP or under FBA, that drops to 3,500. So, and once you hit 3,494 acres of planted corn last year, you get no more payment. Now under soybeans, it was 8,401 acres. Now you drop down to 5,019 acres. Now the big one is rice. You know, these rice, everybody is complaining because rice is getting like what, $200-300 an acre. Problem is, once they hit 1,166 acres, they maxed out. Whereas under the old one, it was about 3,249 acres. So just a chart I wanted to show. And then it was mentioned SDRP. They have not paid out more than about $7 billion on SDRP between stage 1 and stage 2. Remember, there's $16 billion allocated. You were originally paid 35% up front. $7 billion is less than 50% of $16 billion. I personally think we're looking at another 30-35% on top of the 35% you originally were paid. So this year you're going to get an FBA payment. Now, if you've already maxed out on your SDRP, you're not going to get any more. And that's a combined between stage 1 and stage 2. It's a combined payment limit. But easily you could be looking at another another doubling what you got the first time. You may get some more this year, plus FBA, plus on average $60, probably on average $50 to $60 per acre on average for corn and soybean ARC PLC this fall. So it's going to be a fair amount of money. I already talked about that. Also, many of you come in, hey, Paul, you need to sign off on this form FSA 510, whatever it might be, because you need to tell the FSA office that I'm a farmer. We have to go through some calculations. When we go through the calculations, we have to tell you, sorry, you're not a farmer. You go, what do you mean? Well, your equipment gains under the FSA definition do not qualify as farm income. And that was a royal pain, because believe me, because we have to, even though you sign the form, we have to prepare a letter that we provide with the form. Well, starting, we think with the 25 crop year, because that's what the code says. We think with the 25 crop year, you now have equipment gains automatically being farm income. Agritourism is now farm income, and the direct marketing of farm commodity products to consumers is also farm income. Now, I live in Colorado. I moved from Washington about 3.5 years ago. What farm product are we famous for just legalizing a few years ago? Marijuana. So potentially, if that, Trump or President Trump's talked about changing that to what? It's not stage, title, whatever, the change of class 3 to a class 1, I think, or vice versa. Then marijuana growers will become farmers. Right now, they're not, because they automatically can't be. So I'll skip through this. And it was interesting, a lot of the media came out and said, hey, Paul, or hey, farmer, if more than 75% of your AGI, adjusted gross income, is from farming, you don't have an AGI test. Now, most farmers are going to be under the AGI limit anyway, but there's farmers in this room, I can guarantee you there's probably farmers in this room that are over the AGI test. So they would like that. And they were saying that's for all programs. Well, no. ARC PLC, you have a strict AGI limit. There is no getting out of it because you are a farmer. It is a strict limit. However, these disaster programs plus conservation programs under Title II, CS, CRP, CSP, EQIP, etc., no AGI limit if more than 75% of your AGI is from farming. So that potentially is good news. And then we'll talk about some income tax changes. Let me just take a quick look here because I know I'm between you and lunch, so we're still in pretty good shape. We should have 5-10 minutes at the end for questions, and if not, we'll just start on lunch a little quicker. Let's go ahead and get started here. Now, we were worried because one, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which everybody calls the Trump tax cuts back in 2017, that really started mostly in 18. They had sunsets. The lifetime exemption was going to drop back to the old numbers. The tax rates were going to drop back to the old numbers. The personal exemptions, the child tax credit, they're all going to go back to the old numbers. Well, what OBA did is make all of these, almost all of these permanent. But in order to make something permanent, when we're dealing with budget reconciliation, you have to tweak it. And how they tweaked it is on the lifetime exemption. It was going to be 14.2 million this year with inflation. They bumped it up to 15 million. So if you pass away this year, you can be worth $15 million and not owe any federal estate tax. Now in Minnesota with the homestead exemption and so on, you can be worth $5 million. So the key in Minnesota is you got to still have your credit bypass or credit shelter trust and all that stuff. But at the federal level, married couple very easily can be worth 35-40 million. What do I mean by that? If you put your land in an LLC, husband has 50%, wife has 50%, you give away one share or one unit to your kids, now you have a 30-35% discount. So it's pretty easy, 40 million. You're going to be pretty easy. And this is now permanent, which what does permanent mean in tax law? Until they change it. And I'm afraid we're going to be in the whipsaw. You know, so we had Trump #1, change Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Biden almost completely whipsawed it the other way. I mean, we can, I guess if you're of that persuasion, we can thank Senator Manchin, Senator Sinema from Arizona and West Virginia for not whipsawing us the other way. Now, this administration has even gone farther, and if it whipsaws the other way in 29, you know, a lot of this stuff will disappear, and it'll be even worse than they were originally talking about. Now, 100% bonus depreciation. Farmers are unique. You're the only industry where every single asset that you purchase, if you can depreciate it, every single asset you get to deduct 100% the year you purchase it. Buildings, equipment, drainage tile, whatever it might be, 100% deductible. No other industry can do that. But I view bonus depreciation, 100% bonus depreciation, a little bit like crack cocaine. Once you get hooked on it, it's a little tough to get off of it. Plus, my youngest son, from about age 1.5 till about age 6, if he didn't like somebody, he called him an a-hole. And your state of Minnesota, from a tax standpoint, is an a-hole state. So you have that dreaded, you have to add back, you get to amortize bonus depreciation over 5 years. But I think you have unlimited Section 179. So we'll see in a minute where that could be helpful too. Now, the unique thing is this is now permanent, but it's only for assets you acquired after January 19th of last year. So if you acquired something between January 1 and January 19th, you put it to service, that's 40% bonus. Now you can take section 179 on it, so it may not be a big deal. You can make an election, which you will discuss with your CPA this year. You can make an election to do 40% bonus if you wanted to. Now, 199 cap A deduction, many of you are members of the Southern, I think it's the Southern Minnesota Sugar Producers. Do I have that right, or is close enough? That's a cooperative. It may or may not kick out a large DPAD deduction. That's under 199 cap A. If you don't get that deduction and you're just a farmer with corn and soybeans and you net $500,000, you get a $100,000 deduction. It's a 20% deduction. They made a little bit of a tweakage to it. Now, when this law was passed, on my blog, farmcpareport.com, I did a poll and I asked you, which law did you like best? Did you like permanent $15 million lifetime exemption? Did you like permanent 100% bonus depreciation, permanent 199 cap A, or other? And what was the number one? Which one came in number one? This is audience participation right now, so somebody just scream out an answer. I mean, you got 3 choices, so this is not that tough. Remember crack cocaine? Bonus depreciation. That was number one. Now, close behind was lifetime exemption, and then 199A was third. I think primarily because farmers don't know what 199A is. Maybe us CPAs know it, but not so many farmers. Section 179, again, in Minnesota, you may use section 179 and not do bonus. I think that's the rule. I think they've coupled to the federal rules. Don't hold me to that. But starting in 2025, your amount that you can deduct using section 179 is 2.5 million, and the phase out starts at 4 million. So if you're buying only equipment and it's in total less than 2.5 million, just use section 179. Matter of fact, it may be better than bonus anyway. We don't have time to go into that, but that's something I would be looking at. Qualified production property deduction, probably not a big deal here, but if you're a dairy producer, remember you're a farmer until that product that you harvest leaves the field. Once that product leaves the field, you go from being a farmer to being a manufacturer or a production type person or entity. And if you build a building, as a farmer, you build a building, you get to deduct 100% of it the year you build it. As a manufacturing company, you get to depreciate it straight line for the next 39 years. Big difference. Well, qualified production says that if you started building that building, let's say you're a large dairy producer and you build a cheese plant, that cheese plant, that building, you get to depreciate over 39 years. Not very helpful. But as long as you started that after January 19th of last year, or before January 1 of 2029, and place it in service by January 1 of 2031, you get to deduct 100% of that building, but only the portion related to manufacturing and production. If it's an office portion, parking and so on, you can't. That still is 39-year property in most situations. I just brought it up there. I bring this up. Does Minnesota, I think Minnesota, do you have to pay overtime to your employees, farm employees? 40 or 48? Okay. California, I think it's 40, some states it's 56. Your employees may be coming to you and they're asking you, hey, how many hours of overtime? What was my overtime pay? Because I know I get to deduct that on my personal return. The answer is no deduction. Because you're only required to pay overtime because of, again, that AO state. Minnesota requires it. Federal does not require overtime. The only way you get the overtime deduction is if it's required under the Fair Labor Standard Act of 1937, Section 7, that refers to Section 11 or 13. So if your employees ask, tell them it's a big fat zero. Now, they may deduct it anyway, because right now it's loosey-goosey this year, but the correct answer is no deduction. I throw this in there. We're waiting for guidance because this is going to start January 1 of next year, January 1 of 2027. Remember, One genetic chip says thou shalt buy as much farmland, the other genetic chip says thou shalt not pay taxes. So what happens a lot of times, you sell farmland and you use a 1031 exchange to buy other farmland. People in here, I'm sure, the audience this size, at least a few of you have done a 1031 exchange. Well, the problem with the 1031 exchange is it requires you to reinvest the whole sales price. So if you had something you sold for $5 million and $3 million of it is basis and $2 million is gain, you have to reinvest all $5 million into farmland or other assets. And maybe that's what you want to do. Also, you're doing what's called a tax deferred exchange. You only have 45 days to identify property. You can only identify 3. And if you don't buy any of those 3, you've blown the exchange. You have a taxable event. And then lastly, in order to get a step up in basis, what do you need to do? Die. Okay. Now your heirs like that idea, but typically you don't like that idea. So I already know I have farmland in 3 states. My oldest son told me, Dad, the day you die, the day we have the funeral, somewhere in there, we're listing the land. Yeah, so I already know that. Now, maybe they're changing their mind, but that can happen. Well, we have what's called a rural opportunity zone that's going to go into effect January 1 of next year. Your governor in this state, yeah, let's not go into details. But your governor in this state is going to identify those zones this summer, because it's done every 10 years and starting now. And if that zone is not next to a city of 50,000 people or more, you are what's called a rural opportunity zone. Now, in the state of Washington, the county I lived in, Columbia County, the whole county, and the county next to me, the whole county was an opportunity zone. And the benefit here, again, let's go back. So let's pick on Debbie here. You got Debbie, she sells land for $2.5 million. $1.5 million of it is gain, $1 million of it is basis. She tries to do an exchange. It blows up. And she thinks, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. Well, you have 180 days total, just like you do on a 1031 exchange, 180 days total to roll over the gain into an opportunity zone that she is going to create. And I've had multiple clients set up opportunity zones. It's not that big of a deal. So she creates one, she rolls over the 1.5 million, and then she builds a new hog barn. And remember, we can deduct 100% of that hog barn using bonus depreciation. Problem is, she has no basis, so she can't deduct. But that's not necessarily bad. Now, the benefit of the rural opportunity zone is in 5 years, she has to pay tax on the capital gain. Well, that doesn't sound like much of a benefit. Well, the benefit is 30% of that gain disappears because she gets to increase the basis in that land sale by 30%. So in my case, $1.5 million times 30% is 450,000. So 5 years goes by, she now has to report $1.05 million gain, not $1.5 million. And you remember that hog barn, that $1.5 million deduction shows up in the same year because now she's got basis. So originally she had $1.5 million that she's going to pay tax on. Now she's got a $450,000 net loss. Pretty good. And then if she waits 10 years, holds it for at least 10 years, she can then, let's say somebody comes along, pays way too much for that hog barn, offers her $5 million for the hog barn. She then gets to step it up to $5 million. Pretty good deal. This is the only time, the only investment, the only tax vehicle that you get to step up during your life. You don't have to wait until you die. Now, we're waiting for a bunch of guidance on this, but this could be a pretty good deal. Now, it has to be capital gain. Can't be the gain from selling equipment and so on. It has to be capital gain. Now, I know most of you are still going to want to buy farmland. I know that. I'm the same way. I keep buying farmland. So, this is, matter of fact, I just did a blog post on this yesterday, I think. Or maybe today, maybe tomorrow, I got too many. Right now, if you borrow money from a bank, including, I thought it wasn't including the farm credit, but it is including the farm credit banks. As long as the loan is a new loan secured by farm real estate after July 4th of last year, or a refinancing of a loan that was after July 4th of last year, your bank, your life insurance company, your farm credit is allowed to deduct 25% of that interest income. However, they then have to reduce their interest expense related to that loan by 25%. So the net effect is about a 20 basis point reduction in your interest rate. I talked to 2 or 3 bankers when I was at the Land Investment Expo about a month ago in Des Moines. One bank is already reducing their interest rate by that amount. The other bank is actually sending out a rebate. So if you have a new loan secured by farm real estate that was done after you purchased the land after July 4th of last year, make sure you talk to your bank. You might get 20 basis points of that back, potentially. That seems like that's the number right now. And then this is new code section 1062. Originally, it was designed that if you sold your land to a farmer, has to be a qualifying farmer that agrees in writing, a covenant, a deed restriction, etc., that they're going to farm it for the next 10 years, then the gain on that farmland sale would be tax-free. Well, that didn't happen because that was too much. That's too good of a deal. Because then you'd have Bill Gates and everybody else buying up farmland because they knew when they sold it, as long as they sold it to a farmer, it was tax-free. Because there's no restriction on who owns the land when they sell it. It's anybody. What they said is, if you do that, the tax related to that gain, we're going to allow you to pay it in 4 equal installments. So basically a 3-year deferral. 25% is due April. So let's say you sold the land this year, 25% of that gain is due April 15th, no extension. The other 25% April 15th the following year, so on. And so really you save about 6-7% of the tax. I mean, that's all we're talking about. Not a big deal, but it's helpful. Or actually not of the tax, of the of your proceeds or the gain. Okay, and then I think the only thing I want to say, ranch farm solar projects, this is not where you're leasing the ground. This is where you actually want to do the solar project because you want to save on electricity costs, et cetera, et cetera. Some farmers are doing that. All I want to mention on this is you have until the end of next year to get it done. You know, a lot of the other tax credits related to green energy disappeared at the end of last year. This one you got this year and next year. So that's not a bad deal. And if you can get a REAP grant, excuse me, because right now with this administration it's tough to get REAP grants, but if you can, your out-of-pocket costs the first year is not very big. And then finally, the changes to the SALT deduction. In this situation, again, sorry about that. Your limit, whether you're married or single, is $10,000 as far as what you can deduct. That was the old rules. Now it's $40,000. Every year it goes up by 1% through 2029, and in 2030 it reverts back to 10. However, if your AGI is at least 500,000, it starts being phased out. If you're at 600,000 or higher, your limit is 10,000. So that's that. And then finally, again, I mentioned some of you I know subscribe to my blog. But if you are interested in it, you can just scan that code there. And it is subscription based. There is probably 5 to 10% of it is completely free, but the other you do need to be a subscriber. So I'll just leave that up there. I have 11:55, which means I have about 5 minutes for questions. Or there's no questions. I think lunch is ready, but I'm assuming there might be some questions, so I'll just wait a couple minutes. And any questions? And remember, there are no dumb questions. The only dumb question, the question doesn't get asked. Yes.
When do you expect the rules to come out on the pass-through entities and the API test?
So the question is, just because some in the back may not hear it, when do we expect the rules to come out on the entities, the AGI testing and so on? Any day. I mean, their excuse was that the government shut down for a month and a half. Well, that excuse is getting pretty old. It should be any day. Now, I'll tell you, I don't always agree with the IRS rulings and so on, but they're actually well written. I may disagree with them, but I can understand them. They're well written. The FSA handbooks. Remember, I'm from the state that legalized marijuana. I think some of those are written by people that were smoking marijuana because they are not very understandable. So, other questions? Well, either I explained it. Oh, no, we got one here.
Is it true that the no tax on social security is not no tax?
So the question is it true that the no tax on Social Security is no tax? Correct. Got to remember when they were doing budget reconciliation, you cannot make any changes to Social Security. The taxes related to Social Security is mandated for Social Security. So there was no way that they could make Social Security non-taxable. What they did, and I didn't go into a couple of the other ones, like no tax on tips, most farmers, that's not applicable to you. What they did is for those age 65 or older, and I happen to be one of them, I'm 66, we now get a $6,000 deduction. Now, Social Security recipients age 62, 63, 64 collect Social Security, they don't get any deduction. And then if your income is over 150,000 or 250,000, it starts phasing out and fairly quickly. So if your income's over 200,000-300,000, you're not going to get any deduction. And certainly that's going to be the case for me. I get no deduction. But that's how they did it. Now, Social Security, the propaganda, excuse me, I don't want to get political here, but I will. The propaganda that's come out of this administration at times, I mean, they touted right away when the OBA was passed, no tax, or we've eliminated the taxes on Social Security for like 90% of Social Security recipients. Wrong. So, other question? It's going to be like an auctioneer, going once, going twice, 3 times. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all. Again, thank you everybody for coming. Dinner is next. Lisa, it's ready? Okay, so what we're gonna do, as soon as I get done speaking, you go back to that back door, you go through that back door. There's a line out there of food, you come in. Back in, all of our agents will be here if you have any questions. When you leave, you're gonna go out to the side door and we have a bag for everybody that you can grab. So make sure you grab that bag before you leave. Again, thank you for everybody for coming. Thank you for spending time with us this morning. And we'll be in touch. Thanks so much.